To our, it's being recorded. Very good. Okay, welcome everyone to our August 6th regular monthly meeting. It's a virtual meeting as we've been doing now for a while. So usually we introduce ourselves when we're in a nice community center hallway. But I see that we're all here. Almost everybody's here.
Everybody but George is here, and
okay.
Mary. Mary is unable to get in, but we have with us Sheriff Kendall,
Good.
Frank Demling, Naphele Barrett, and Una Wirkebau.
Okay. So
and we have several people from the public here. I won't name them all, but they're here too.
Okay.
Tom, as you introduced the people that are on the screen that I see, would you give their affiliations, please, if they're here in some official capacity?
Yes, Naphele Barrett is the Executive Director of the Mendocino Council of Governments. We're glad to have her here. Hi, Naphele, I haven't talked to you since last fall. And Sheriff Kendall, of course, you know. Frank Demling is the project manager for the Gualala Streetscape project. I see Kathleen Chasey's here from the Mill Bend project, Una Wirkebau from Move 2030. And we have a couple of guests on the screen too, who I imagine will introduce themselves when they want to speak.
Okay, let's start off with our consent agenda.
No. Item 1.
Introductions and announcements. Okay, what I wanted to mention, but I'll mention it later on, I guess, just so we can get moving here. But just want to try to keep an orderly meeting and so on and so forth. Let everybody speak and try to announce yourself if you want to speak, so that we have either I or Tom will kind of recognize you, and then we'll go from there. So otherwise, we've been doing pretty good on these meetings here for how long now? 4 or 5 months. So I'll talk about it a little bit later. But anyway, Tom asked me about starting off with an invocation. So I think that's where we're at right now, right?
Yes.
Why don't
and thank you. I know this is a bit unusual, but we lost a great American last month. And I wanted to start tonight's meeting with a tribute to the inspiring leadership of John Lewis. Mr. Lewis is best known as a tireless advocate of civil rights, of course. He spent his entire life pushing against the system rigged against African Americans. And he also served something like 43 years in Congress. For those of us who are pushing a 4-year term on GMAC and thinking it's hard, consider that he served almost 11 times as long. But I'd like to quote something he said in another context, last year's impeachment hearings. I think it can be applied to many of the challenges we face here on the council and in our daily lives. And it impressed me this month and inspired me to take some action. He said, when you see something that is not right, not just, not fair, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something. Our children and their children will ask us, what did you do? What did you say? We have a mission and a mandate to be on the right side of history. So as we explore issues and make decisions tonight about the future of Gualala, let us make sure we're on the right side of history. And when our grandchildren ask us what we did, what we said, that we can be proud of our answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, well said.
I would just like to add a comment. As a very small child, I was at the March on Washington, in which John Lewis made one of his profound commentaries, and he has been a hero of mine through decades. And we will certainly, in terms of moral leadership, feel his loss.
All right. Thank you, Sherry.
Now, I'm going to try to keep everybody's names on the screen so I can see them. Somebody just checked in from a phone number ending in 9706. Would you please identify yourself?
Bill Merget.
Bill Merget. Thank you, Bill.
George is muted.
George has joined us.
I think that's on his end. Yeah. George, can you hear us okay? Where are you, buddy?
Before I could join, so.
There he is.
There he is.
Okay. The gang is all here. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
Okay, folks, consent agenda. We have the approval of last month's meeting minutes, the 2nd of July. Mary's not with us yet, is she? But we should probably take a vote on whether we want to approve those or not. Should I just go down right down the list?
Well, let's
Anybody
just
have-
say, are there any changes?
Or anybody else have any edits or changes they want to make to the meeting minutes from July?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll go right down the list here. Sherry, are you, or we'll make a motion first on approving the minutes.
Move to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll
second,
second.
Murphy and
Lloyd?
George.
Lloyd, or who seconded that?
George.
Okay, so let's have a roll call vote then. Sherry,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
George,
aye,
Lloyd,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Robert. Aye.
7-0. Correspondence. We received CDP 2020-017 for 3230 South Highway 1. That's Mr. Chasey.
Yes.
Correct.
And
And
I'm
we
not-
will-
I'm not going
we
to be
will-
involved in any discussions on that.
You probably
Okay,
shouldn't be, huh?
Chasey
Probably not.
recuses.
I'm
So we
recused.
will hear that later in the meeting. We'll assign that, okay? As we get down to number 12.
Approval of the August 6th meeting
So
agenda.
now let me continue, Tom. We're gonna have approval of this August 6th meeting agenda. Now, are there any changes? I have a couple of changes. I'd like to add the Caltrans update on the 440 project, which is the paving project through the southern part of Mendocino County.
Where would you like to add that?
Oh, probably at the very end of council matters.
Do you want to put it after GCAP?
No, let's put it after, do we all have the correct version of the agenda? G, the very last discussion item under council matters would be Gualala Town Plan, the whole council. So can we put it under that?
Yes. New
Okay.
item 7H, project 440.
The 440 project, it's the OF 440 project is what it's officially called. And it's the paving project here in the southern Mendocino County area.
Is that your update, Mr. Chairman?
That'll be my update. Yeah, I talked
Okay.
to a project engineer on that.
Okay, good.
Now, I'd also, I don't know, completely slipped my mind, but we usually have the status of the water moratorium on the agenda. Can we put that back on? Maybe under H, or make item I,
Item I, update on water moratorium,
status of the water moratorium, yes.
and that's Youngling?
Yeah, I'll give that.
Okay, I'm playing Mary here.
Okay, so those are my two small changes.
Oh, Mary's here.
Mary's here, okay.
Any other changes to the agenda?
Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to approve or disapprove the edited August 6th agenda.
Move to approve the August 6th agenda as amended.
Do we have a second?
Mr.
Second.
Lloyd, I'll second.
Okay, I
Murphy
heard
and
Terry.
Lloyd.
Okay, however. And let's take a vote on that. Sherry,
Aye.
Don?
Aye.
Melissa,
Abstain.
same. George,
aye,
Lloyd,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
and Robert is an aye.
Melissa,
Okay.
did you abstain?
Yes.
All right, that's
abstained.
6-0 and 1.
Okay, we'll move on to number 3, public input on non-agenda items. Do we have anybody in the audience that wants to say something about an item that's not on our agenda tonight?
If you do have want to communicate with us, you can use the chat online. You can also raise your hand on the phone by pressing *6. I see
Okay,
nobody
hearing-
raising their hand.
Hearing none, we'll move on to number 4, which is the law enforcement report. I heard that Matt Kendall is on the phone or something that he's attending, so that's good to hear. Good evening, Mr. Kendall.
Good evening. Hey, thanks for having me. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. I'm Matt Kendall, Sheriff. I have with me Lieutenant Michael Digert. Lieutenant Digert is in charge of the coast, north and south coast. Lieutenant Digert has been working for the Sheriff's Office about 27 years now. He and I, as very young men, were both on the coast together, although he was working for the Fort Bragg Police Department back then. And earlier this year, we were able to promote him to the rank of lieutenant, and he's running the coast. Currently, we've seen an uptick, not so much in violence, but we got the theft issue kind of under control. We had that one issue in Albion that some of the folks read about, where we had a SWAT call out, and that man was taken into custody with minimal damage and no damage to our people. Thank goodness for that. However, we're continuing to see a lot of unintended consequences of the COVID-19 shelter in place. As I discussed with you before, our suicides, we are on track to be 40% above last year, 40% above our 3-year average, as a matter of fact. We're 25% on track to be 25% above deaths due to overdose. That does not count overdoses that we have done Narcan saves on. You know, these are the things that we're kind of up against the wall on. Last week, actually 2 weeks ago now, we were able to take the dual response model before the Measure B board, and they okayed it to go before the Board of Supervisors. Measure B is taking, I believe, $380,000 to put towards 3 clinicians to work on a daily basis with the Sheriff's Office, deputy sheriffs, to go out and take on mental health issues and behavioral health issues, as well as drug and alcohol dependency issues in a very proactive fashion. My undersheriff and captain went over to Butte County Sheriff's Office, where they met with Sheriff Honey and his captain. They found that the data and statistics they have absolutely warrant this new approach to it. They've reduced 5150 transports by 47% throughout the county, and they only have 1 shift working it. So 8 hours of a 24-hour day, they're having this response. Everything ready to move into a swing shift. Currently, it's on day shift. They're going to be moving into a swing shift. And we think that we're going to be able to basically bridge some service gaps, especially in the outlying areas of the county. And when we look at the issues that we're seeing in society, a lot of these issues are because there are service gaps when you get to the out-of-the-way places. Lieutenant Digert can brief you in on what they've been dealing with on a daily basis on the North Coast and South Coast here. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, we've been having a lot of people calling in for help or suicidal, and our deputies are responding to it. And part of the issue is, like I said, they're out of the way. The other problem is the time it takes to get mental health services to us. And I think some of that's probably been cleared up. I think there's communication errors on some of that. And, because we usually take them to the hospital, and we have to wait for them there to get a mental health worker there. And I think having a, system we're talking about in Florida would definitely be a big help. Get people to come out with us, seeing some of the stuff that's going on, and maybe even in some situations over if it's non-violent and there's just somebody needing help, rather than tying up a deputy. So that's been the biggest issue. We've seen a lot, and it's up and down the coast. A lot of people, we've had a couple of suicides already, and people jumping off the bridges here. And since I've been here in 3 months, we've had 4 people here jump off bridges since I've been here, and that's quite a bit I've ever seen in my career here. So it's definitely been an uptick in mental health services there.
So do you have any questions for myself or the lieutenant?
Sheriff and the Lieutenant, we're going to be talking about the homeless issue a little later tonight. Any observations on homeless people?
We were just discussing that with the city manager down here in Point Arena, and that is also something that will fall into this outreach, because we're finding people who, let's face it, most homeless people are probably, I would say, the biggest percentage of them are dual diagnosis. It's mental health and a drug or an alcohol issue. We're seeing that a lot, and they wind up on the streets due to basically burning their bridges with family and friends because they haven't gotten the services that they needed. And so we think that this proactive approach is going to be able to help us to be able to get these folks back on track and get them back into their lives where they can be in a residence. I know that we've seen a lot of things, especially with the our disabled veterans, where our country is starting to do a much better job of making sure that their needs are met so that they don't become homeless. And we've had some disabled veterans out on the street who choose to live that way. And it's, you know, there's always a little bit of freedom versus what's good for you. And I think that if we can get the services out there, then we're going to start seeing less and less of these problems. But we've got to do it proactively. We've got to make that outreach before they have a problem.
Thank you for that, Sheriff. You know, I just want to note, I appreciate that you pointed out sometimes homelessness is a choice. I had a friend who was a Stanford grad and lived in the park in San Francisco for 5 years. He was perfectly fine. And I said, why do you choose to be homeless? And he said, I'm not homeless, I'm roofless. Ever since then, I've looked at homeless people a little bit differently. I know there's a lot of people that don't have that choice. I'm very concerned about them, but thank you for working on that problem.
Well, we're going for the board on the 18th, and I believe that we will make some progress on this. I think that a lot of what we're seeing with those quality of life issues are really truly service gaps, and we have got to work harder to make sure that these things don't happen. And if we deal with them proactively, you know, then suddenly we're just dealing with the folks who have a choice. We don't want to see them out there because they don't.
Sheriff Kendall, how are you and your deputies handling issues about people who are living in their cars and parking their cars on private property and all of that? Are you running them off? Are you counseling? What is the procedure for dealing with that?
People who are living in their cars on the highway, anywhere on Highway 1, Highway Patrol's responsibility, but we will work with them. If Highway Patrol is not available, we will absolutely run them off because it's simply not. I mean, they're in the highway right away. If they've got their jacks down, or if they are sleeping in the car or something like that. And of course, we have to understand some tired motorists do need to pull over. Okay.
But no, I was thinking less about along Highway 1 is about some of the roads here in town.
Oh, okay. Well, if they're trespassing, and we will absolutely leave them along.
Okay.
You have to remember, as access from the center line of the road, in a lot of roads, the county's right-of-way or easement does change based on some maps. But for the most part, they have to be moved along because 99% of the time they are actually on private property.
Thank you.
So I'd like to say something too, Matt. Yesterday, I had a little incident here at the Fort Gualala property in downtown Gualala. And it was, I think, a mental illness situation, but we kind of dealt with it ourselves. It was on private property here, and we kind of shooed the person off. They were smoking a cigarette, and I said, no, that can't happen here. You got to leave. But it was definitely a mental illness situation. And I think the person is still roaming around here in Gualala. Do you want to be called on things like that, or?
Absolutely.
Give us a reminder on that.
Absolutely. We want to be called. I remember, oh, my goodness, must have been, I think it was yesterday, but I know it was 20 some odd years ago when the church was burned in Gualala. I worked on that case, and that was based in a large part with mental illness. And if we don't deal with it proactively, we wind up dealing with the spoils of it, arsons, problems, things like that. And, you know, if there's anything that we can do to deal with those gaps before they become big felony violations. That's what we need to do. Stop the problems while they're still small.
Okay, I neglected to call you. I should have.
Well, that's one of those calls that, you know, the deputies will deal with it appropriately, but they've got to know that it's, and eventually, will we run into that person? Absolutely. But it's better if we run into them on the first day than the fourth.
Okay. George.
Yes, if a camper or a van is parked in a utility easement, does that constitute trespassing?
Right. In a utility easement can be on private property, it can be on public property. So we would have to take a look and see where they're at.
Yeah, typically, like in our neighborhood, the utility easement would be part of private property, but it's being used for utilities. A lot of people think that because it's an easement, anybody can use it and they can park and do whatever they want. I don't think that's true, but
no.
Yeah, we're seeing a growing number of out of area vehicles coming through here, not just vacationing, but people that are looking for a free place to camp. And the vehicle I saw night before last was 2 nights ago. It was a van that was out of Southern California, had license plate holders that said Topanga Canyon. That tells you that people are coming pretty far from Southern California to get away from pandemic or whatever. But I think we're going to see more homeless people. If they don't do something to help people who are renting right now and people start getting evicted, we're going to see a mass of homeless people in cars and campers and whatever they can get their hands on, probably.
Yeah.
I'll talk more about it later, but I'm the one that asked Robert to add the homeless issue to the agenda because I have received since our last meeting, 4 phone calls from Gualala residents complaining that homeless people sleeping in their cars, living in their cars, and some of them have been that way for ages. We all know them. Were parked on their property. There was a litter issue. This is particularly prevalent along the road that goes down by the river. Is it called River Road? I don't know the name of it, but the road that goes down along by the river. And so one morning about 7:30, I drove out there and just drove down the road, and there were 6 cars parked on that stretch of road with people apparently living in the car.
Is that a big portion of that? Is that Gualala that owns that now?
Gualala Redwood's Timber owns that area now.
Oh, okay. Well,
That wasn't who was complaining.
Wait,
no, but
no, that's not true. So this is Kathleen Chasey. I'm on the board of the Redwood Coast Land Conservancy, and we have a conservation funder who has purchased that property. Is no longer a timber company. It's a private conservation. And I'm on the agenda to talk about that issue that Sharon, you just brought up. So maybe I'll just wait. We have an issue. We're working with the Coastal Commission, etc.
Thank you, Kathleen.
It's not timber property. It is conservation property.
it is now. Okay.
Well, keep in mind, we're talking about 2 different areas. Are we talking about the stretch that goes beyond the Gualala Arts Center? Or are we talking about south of town here at the Mill Bend area?
I'm talking about Mill Bend.
And I was talking about the stretch that goes past the community center.
Gualala
I mean,
Arts.
the art center.
So that's, I wanted to differentiate there, okay?
Important. Thank you.
So anybody else have questions for Mr. Matt Kendall? Okay. Anything else to report, Matt?
The masking stuff. Today I dropped off a whole bunch of posters and flyers to be scattered up and down the coast to the smaller towns in Mendocino. We've got some volunteers that are coming and they're going to put the flyers up. We've written a couple of citations on the infraction site for people who are refusing to mask. Lieutenant Digert has still been using one of our bailiffs who's available right now. Court closure. One of the courts is closed due to social distancing, and had good patrols on it. We haven't had a lot of calls from the South Coast area. I know that we had one who was a problem in the grocery store in Gualala, but the deputies were not there at the time. They ran down there as fast as they could. He was gone. And I'm not certain who it was. It did not sound like it was a local. It was somebody who just flat refused to mask, and we would have gladly received him a $100 bill. So we're getting some traction on that. I was in Mendocino this afternoon and in Point Arena this evening. We're seeing a lot of good compliance. Lieutenant Digert and I are both kind of stuck on this issue of there's a lot of people who call in who don't understand what the law is. If a man is driving down the road by himself in a car with no mask, he's not violating the law. And, you know, there's a lot of clarifying questions that come in constantly. So we receive a lot of calls on it, but not that many of them are actual violations now. So I think that we're getting somewhere with the education.
Matt, you're breaking up a little.
Okay, let me move my phone closer. We're in this, we're in the sheriff's office in Point Arena. So basically, talking about the masking stuff, the sheriff's office has written a couple of citations, but those citations were based on people who were refusing to mask. And, you know, we've had some calls for service regarding this where we've had to educate people. If a person's driving down the road by themselves in the car, they're not required to wear a mask. And if a person is, you know, 10 feet away from everybody and he's walking on the beach, that person's not required to mask. And so there's a lot of confusion in this still. I've asked county council and they did provide me with a sheet, kind of like the 10 Commandments. These are the things that you cannot do, because it's much easier to read than trying to go through 19 pages of health orders. And so we're getting that out. We're working with Mendo Maskers, with the Fort Bragg Junto, with the various chambers of commerce. And, you know, we're getting some pretty good traction on it.
Okay. Anything else then under the law enforcement report?
I have a question.
Okay, Melissa? The last 3 times in the last couple of weeks I've been in Junior's automotive and house pump supply, the people who work there have their masks on, but they pull it down below their nose.
The mask needs to go over your nose. I
know that.
And, you know, that's one of those things where if there's an issue with it, call the hotline. Basically, it's 234-6052. Make a report. If it's regarding a business, then the code enforcement portion of Mendocino County deals with businesses. If it's regarding a person, then the sheriff's office or the special investigative unit deals with those.
Okay, what was that number again?
234-6052, the call center.
234, what was the rest?
6052.
Is that the COVID call center or the police call center?
It's the COVID call center, and 100% of the complaints get triaged through there, and then they immediately send them over to either code enforcement, special investigative unit, or the sheriff's office.
Awesome, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we're all updated. Mr. Kendall, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I'm going to sign off here. I got to call my wife real quick.
Okay, we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Sheriff. Thanks, Lieutenant. May I just make a note for Mary's sake? Mary joined us a little bit late. Mary, I took notes on the early part of the meeting, so you don't have to worry about that, and I'll catch you up after the meeting.
Okay. In that case, we'll move on then to our CDP number 2020-0015 Graffin. That location is at 34550 South Highway 1. That is a coastal development permit for 3 test wells on an undeveloped parcel. Who visited this site again?
I did and Sherry did.
Okay, Sherry and Lloyd. Do we have the Graffins here by chance? Now, I know them fairly well,
We
and
do not.
I'm going to have to recuse myself from this one, okay? But go ahead, council members, and tell us what you found.
I sent them all of the information regarding the meeting, but I had a terrible time trying to get on the meeting, and I didn't arrive till 18 minutes after 8 or 6. So I don't know if she could get on or not. I see Mr. Alvarez did. Or no, I guess I don't know if he's a part of this, but I sent it to
we can assume,
Armando at the pump people.
we can assume that they would call us or contact somebody on the council. They did not check in, so let's just go ahead with the report.
Let's go to the council member input, Mary.
Lloyd, why don't you start?
This is an interesting property. It's 700 feet long and 120 feet wide. And the 120 feet is along the side of the highway. And so you go all the way back and you get a beautiful view of the ocean. So it's a desirable property from that point of view. In fact, 6 years ago, I looked at the property when I was house hunting. And at the time, it was a wet winter and the whole property was filled with water. I couldn't walk from the front to the back of the property without going up to my knees. And if you look at it today, when we're in a drought situation, you can tell there's not water on it right now, but it's covered with riparian grasses and sedges. So
Vegetation.
my thinking on this property is that they ought to have a biological report before they do anything, because I think there's a pretty significant risk of them stepping in something that shouldn't be stepped in if they start drilling on the property. So that would be my input on the CDP.
I walked the property myself just about a week ago. It's a beautiful property. If you can stand the sea lions barking when you get down close to the water, because they're very loud. I did, while the property was dry, I had spoken with Lloyd earlier, and he told me about when he tried to walk the property a few years ago. The property was dry when I was walking it, but as I got about a third of the way into the property, the ground is very spongy. So I agree with Lloyd about the need for a biological study. I was a little surprised at some of the statements on the report that reported much of it as barren, because it certainly wasn't. The only other thing, I did find each of the markings for the wells. They're clearly and plainly marked. The only thing, the only discontinuity that I really saw was the posting at the front of the property was essentially a blank form. There was nothing written on it other than the form itself saying there is a permit application pending, but there was no information, nothing written on it. It was completely blank. Other than that, I suggest a biological study, and let's go from there.
Okay. Any other council member input on this CDP? Do one of the walkers want to make a motion on how we want to proceed on this?
Yeah, I guess the question is whether we say, no, we don't think it should be approved until they get a biological study, or yes, it should be approved subject to a biological study. But
I have a procedural question. Since this is just for drilling 3 test wells to see if there's available well water on the property for development, I'm not sure I see any harm in doing the test wells, but depending on what kind of equipment is going in to do it, I'd hate to see heavy equipment driving over some of that vegetation and some of the spongy areas. But do they have to, if they decide to go forward, do they have to come back for another round of review?
Well, as I said, I'm going to recuse myself from a vote on this, but they're going to have to get a coastal development permit to drill for a well. George?
Well, I guess my question is, what will a biological study tell them as opposed to a geological study? That if you've had flooding on the property, a biological study may not really tell you much of anything. I don't know. If you're, if you're looking at the geology of the site and what's contributing to flooding, then you're going to want somebody to do core sampling. Then you need a permit to do the core sampling. I'm not sure how it all stacks up, frankly. And I don't know what the potential hazards are of drilling test wells versus, doing some other kind of study there. I mean, it seems to me like, biological study isn't necessarily going to tell them what they want to know.
Well, I think
What kind of
Melissa,
what kind of study needs to be done to prove or disprove if it is indeed a buildable lot? If it is not a buildable lot because it's so moist, then the wells should not be drilled.
Yeah, I think the probability is high that this is environmentally sensitive habitat area. And you shouldn't be dragging, in my opinion, shouldn't be dragging heavy equipment across environmentally sensitive property until you've cleared it and know that it's not a risk. So my motion would be to say, no, they should not get approved for a CDP until they have completed a biological study.
From what I hear, that seems the most logical choice to make.
so he has a motion on the floor. Does anybody want to second that? And then we can discuss a little further.
I'll second it.
I'll second that.
Okay, so Sherry has seconded it. Any other council?
Can you repeat the motion, please?
No, I seconded it.
Well, I thought I heard Sherry say that she seconded it.
Yeah, you were too late,
Oh.
Melissa.
Melissa, you
Okay.
Lloyd, can you want to repeat it? Or
Sure. The motion is that we should say no on approval of the CDP until they have completed a biological study.
Or geological to prove that it's buildable, or both?
Well, I think they'll find that out from the biological study.
Okay.
okay, so we have enough input on this. Should we take a vote? Sherry,
Aye.
Don,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Lloyd,
Aye.
and Tom.
Aye.
And I will recuse myself.
And I'll go ahead and write to the county our response.
Okay.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Thanks. Okay, moving on, we have Kathleen Chasey tonight giving us an update on the Mill Bend project. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. So for those that are maybe from Caltrans, et cetera, I am on the board of the Redwood Coast Land Conservancy, and we are actively purchasing the 113 acres at the mouth of the Gualala River. And so I have 4 little announcements as updates, and then 1 request of GMAC. So we have a $2.7 million community campaign going on right now, as evidenced by hopefully lots of things in your mailbox and emails, and the big banner down at the river. And of that $2.7 million, we are left with less than $29,000 left to raise. So that's pretty friggin' awesome for this little tiny community. So we'll get ourselves a park. Escrow for ownership, our RCLC is probably December. So that's how quickly we're moving on it. And we're starting an 18-month site assessment. Actually, it starts next week. So we will be doing our biological studies, et cetera, on that site to figure out where we could put the California Coastal Trail, et cetera, on there. And then just as an announcement, on August 30th, we'll be having a community webinar. It would be a community forum, but we all know why we're not doing forums. And we'll give an update on where we are. So look for that if that interests you. And we're going to follow it up with actually a survey asking the community about public access requests. we would rather do it in person at a community forum or through tours that we were giving back in November and December of last year, right after the property was put into conservation, but that's not possible with the virus. So we'll do our best with a semi-interactive webinar and a survey that follows up. So those are my announcements. Any questions or comments on those?
I have one question, and that is, we had a report last time we met about number of campers and some general misbehavior and garbage and that kind of thing down at the site. Have you been able to back that off some?
And Sharon is my shill in the audience for my.
You can pay me later.
Absolutely. So what Sharon is pointing to, and I think Mary, you noticed it also, there was an article front page in the ICO that talked about 6 different campfires that we found, either both on the gravel bar beach at Mill Bend and on the kayak, we call it the kayak road leading down to the kayak, the bend in the river. And so that is alarming that the willows and grasses are quite dry. The same thing that Sharon mentioned earlier about the Gualala Road that's past Gualala Arts that has campers on it. We were having the same experience. So we actually, I didn't bring it up when the sheriff was on the phone, but we actually have called the sheriff several times. I will be quite honest, we have not really ever gotten a response. And shame on me for not bringing it up. I kind of thought he would still be on the call at this point. But we know that as stewards of the land, we're responsible for keeping it safe. So we have been working very closely with 2 different organizations, the California Coastal Commission and the State Coastal Conservancy, who is one of our funders. And we are requesting to put the gate back on the kayak road at Highway 1. And when I say put it back on, the previous owner, Ollie Edmonds of Gualala Redwoods, Inc., who sold our conservation fund of the property, he used to have a gate there. And it angered quite a few people in the community because they couldn't easily access the river. Obviously, they were trespassing, but it had been happening for a long time. And so over time, the Coastal Commission, and this is, I think, 5 or 6 years ago, asked Ollie Edmonds and GRI to file a CDP asking for permission. He refused, he did not want to do that. A year later, he put the property up for sale. So that was an obvious reason why he didn't want to spend the money and the time. But we would like to return that gate, a nicer gate, lovelier gate, maybe even a sign that says Mill Bend. And the Coastal Commission is asking us to make sure, so that we can try to move it along as quickly as possible. The CDP is, I'm asking if GMAC to support that and to write us a letter supporting that. We are also asking the fire department. Greg Warner is writing us a letter. And with those 2 letters, I will tell you what we're going to do with those 2 letters is then go and ask CDFW to come on site and look at it and also write us a letter to help it move quicker. So now you're saying, oh my goodness, they want to close that access. What you may or may not know is part of the process of acquiring this property, we have built some really nice partnerships. And one of our partnerships is with Sonoma County Regional Parks. So as we all know, they run the campground and the Gualala Point Regional Park just across the river. And they have agreed in writing, supported by Linda Hopkins, to, as they're closing their own gates every evening, they're going to close our gate. And they'll do this, they'll open it in the morning and they'll close it at night. So essentially it'll be more or less a dusk to dawn type of arrangement. That will only prevent vehicles from using the kayak road. We will, per the Coastal Commission, have an offsetting gate so that a person, so let's say you're an early morning person and you want to go bird watching, or you want to take your kayak down to the water, your paddleboard, and we haven't, the Parks Department has not yet opened the gate yet because you want to be down there at 5 a.m. You can still wheel your boat through or hike through. There will be a pedestrian passage. Exactly where the gate goes is a phone call I'm making to Frank Demling tomorrow morning. I didn't know he'd be on the call, to see if we can actually get the appropriate encroachment permit to actually put the gate within the right of way. If we cannot, or it's too cumbersome of a process, we'll put it outside of the right of way, which is 80 feet off of the center line. So that is my sort of whole spiel. So I'm asking for a GMAC letter of support on returning a vehicular gate to the quote unquote kayak road at Millbend that would be opened and closed daily by the Sonoma County Regional Parks Department. Questions, comments, motions?
So the CDP is still coming before us, correct?
Yes, you'll see it. The reason I am asking Robert for this sort of in hand is the Coastal Commission, they realize that as a land trust in a very quiet little part of Mendocino County, which doesn't have a lot of law enforcement availability, and the fact that when you're camping down there, or if you're parking down there on the Millbend Road, you can't see anybody. You know, you can't see the cars that are down there. Over Father's Day weekend, there were 8 cars and 3 fire pits, and they were all there all night long. And we knew they were there and made a phone call on that they were there, but we also went back and you know, found all the evidence of the camping, etc. So that site can't tolerate that. You know, eventually, when we have done our due diligence with the site planning, there will likely be enough development that maybe would have a bathroom. It would still have no camping, no fires, etc. But it's not. It can't take that kind of pressure in the evening. You know, those willows are really dry right now.
Kathleen, can I just review? You said you're going to ask the Sonoma County Parks to do this. Is it in Sonoma County or Mendocino County?
In Mendocino County. They are doing us a favor. So that
and have they said they'll do this, and is it okay with Mendocino County?
Yes. They have not only, Tom, said they'll do this, we have it in writing. We've had it in writing for 2.5 years. Sonoma County Regional Parks views the Millbend purchase as something that is absolutely excellent for this, the Gualala River watershed, and the fact that there's 2 counties, that the river separates 2 counties. If you read almost anything Linda Hopkins talks about when she talks about, you know, the north end of Sonoma County on the coast, she talks about this whole community as a whole. So they are in writing with money going to open and close the gate and actually do quite a few other things for us.
Before we go to the motion, Mr. Chairman, I'm wondering if any member of the public wants to speak. We have an unusually large number today.
Do we? Okay. Audience members.
If you do wish to speak, you can either signal it by chat, or if you're on a phone, you can press *6. I see nothing.
Okay. How do the rest of the audience members feel about writing a letter of support for the vehicle gate?
I have no objection. I would make a motion that we go ahead and write the letter.
Okay.
Sounds like a good plan to me.
Who would like to write the letter?
Who is going to second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Who is
thank
that?
you.
Sharon?
Sherry?
Any further comment from either Kathleen or the council members on this issue? Okay, then let's take a vote. Who's going to write the letter?
Let's pass it first.
Okay. Sherry.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
Melissa.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Lloyd.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
And Robert. I'm an aye. Okay. We're all in favor of writing a letter of support. Looks like George raising his hand to write the letter.
Just a point of order, Robert. Should Lloyd be voting on this?
That's Lloyd.
I can abstain, whatever. Yep.
You know, Lloyd, I have no problem with this, but I think maybe you should recuse yourself from any Mill Bend issues.
That's fine. I'll abstain.
Okay, so the vote would be 601?
Yeah.
6-0 with one recusal.
And we just have the letter writing issue still. And maybe one, well,
Sherry, you've been talking to Kathleen about this. Would you take this on?
Sorry, Sherry.
I will if Kathleen will, if I can talk with Kathleen and get some input on how things should be phrased. I've got the gist of what the council wants, but I'd like to be able to touch base with her and get some phrasing.
I would be delighted. Thank you very, very much.
I'll do it.
I think that'd be fine because we're still going to be seeing the actual CDP and we're going to be weighing in on it again at a later point, right?
Correct.
Actually, what I was looking for was a little bit more statistics and information about the problem that led to the request for the gate.
Okay.
That's really all I would want from her.
Between you and Kathleen. Okay. Well, good. We have a letter writer then in Sherry. Okay. Well, thank you for the wonderful update, Kathleen. That's all on that subject matter.
That is. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So let's move on to council matters. So we've got a lot of things here that we're going to be going through. So I thought, since we've been doing pretty good on our,
I see Mary waving.
Mary, do you want to?
We didn't, the water status of the moratorium was not put on the agenda, and I didn't know if you wanted to mention anything about it.
Mary,
And I
before,
don't know if you.
Mary, I was late getting on. You were late getting on, but we did cover a couple of additional items on the agenda.
Mary, we've added 7H for the 440 project and 7I for the update on the Gualala water moratorium.
We have those matters on an edited agenda, on an amended agenda, Mary.
Oh, H
and I.
on what?
The 440 project.
Caltrans 440 project is good, Mary.
And I.
Is the status of water moratorium.
Oh, the water status. Very well. Thank you very much. I just,
Okay.
it hadn't gotten onto the agenda, and I apologize for not doing that.
Okay, so now that we're getting into a lot of different council matters, I thought I'd bring up something, and that was that we've been doing really well with these COVID times here as far as our virtual meetings, and at times we've had some problems with people interrupting each other, and we don't always know who's speaking, so I was just going to come up or suggest that we do from here on in. I was going to do it under the announcements, but I was a little bit confused when I was signing in so late, but I thought I'd mention some ground rules and see if you all agree. So for handling all of these agenda items as far as council matters go, individuals that are wanting to speak, they should identify themselves and be acknowledged by either myself or Tom as a moderator before they're granted the floor to speak. Does everybody think that's a good way to go about this? And we can hear each person individually and get a clear understanding of what they're saying. And as far as the presentations go that we're going to be probably seeing here tonight, I would say we give about 15 to 20 minutes just in the essence of having some kind of time constraints on these things. And then individuals, when they are granted the floor to speak, can speak maybe 3 to 5 minutes. That way we have a little bit more orderly process in all of this. And I'll be asking Tom to maybe keep an eye on the clock and to help out on these matters. Okay, so what do you all think on that?
Robert, are you saying all the council matters? Because I'm going to need more time than that for our report.
Well, you know, if we keep it in about a 15 to 20 minute time frame, I'm thinking we should be able to cover these different items.
I'm thinking of the report that you and I worked on. that will take 15 or 18 minutes itself.
I
Right.
think that some of them will take less time, so we'll probably have a little slop over to spare.
You know, I've never been one to cut people short, as you know, but I just thought, because we're getting into the meat of our agenda, maybe just to keep things within a certain time constraint. If they go a little bit over, I'm certainly not going to stop anybody, but we should try to keep some guideline, and that's why I wanted to suggest this. Okay, everybody okay with that?
I would say it depends on the item. We have a fairly complex item tonight on the GCAP issue,
Right.
and that's going to take longer.
Okay. Well, that's the committee that I'm on with you, Tom, and I know it's going to take a little while because there's a lot that we got to cover there.
Well,
but
why don't you explain that one separately, and we can approve. I don't mind the 15-minute limit on everything else.
Okay. Well, so let's on the update on the Gualala Downtown Enhancement Project, which is part of the GCAP committee, and we have Frank in attendance, which is great. I would say we start off with giving Frank maybe some time to give us an update on the project, especially since we have all the new plans now. And then we'll go into...
Excuse me, I saw George's hand up.
George?
I just wanted to say, Robert, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
And we also have Naphele here. Before everybody got on, I told Frank, he said he needs a few minutes, and then Naphele's here. I think she wants to brief us. So maybe Frank, Naphele, and then I can give our committee's report.
Okay, so I didn't see, well, I see Naphele's name, but I didn't know she'd be with us tonight too. So, okay, but that's kind of the general concept. And after that, we'll go into the report that Tom and I have been working on. And then we'll go into another 15 to 20 minute session where audience members can speak and have their time on the floor. And then we'll go back to the council members individually, and they can weigh in on all that's been talked about.
Okay, did you want me to, the way you expressed that, I think you wanted me to mute everybody and then recognize people individually. Is that correct?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
And how do we signal we'd like to be recognized?
Like Mary's doing, waving her hand.
Or you can use the chat function online, or
And then-
if you're on a phone, you can use *6.
And then Tom will catch that.
Theoretically, that'll show up.
Yeah.
We are, so you want me to moderate this, Robert?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, let me take over for this item then.
Can I one question, please?
Yes, Don.
So clarity, the 3 to 5 minutes, Robert, that you mentioned for speaking time, does that apply to both members of the public and council members, or is there differentiation between public and council members?
Oh, that was roughly what I was thinking.
You know, our rule in the bylaws is 3 minutes for public, and I think what we did last time on the bylaws is 5. So I think 5 minutes for council members, and I'll be calling them the same order that we used for the bylaws. Okay. So basically what I'm going to do here, if I may just start now.
Please do.
We have a pretty extensive public hearing.
Sherry has a question.
Well, before we get started, I just wanted to say that I think 5-minute limit on council comments is not going to be enough because there are quite a few complicated issues and there's been quite a bit of public input, both directly in the ICO today and to individual council members along the way. So I request some indulgence on the 5-minute limitation for council members to speak.
Well, we could limit it initially to the 3 to 5 minutes. And if it gets a little bit too much, Sherry, maybe we can come back to those individuals that have more to say. Would that be all right?
You know, I think everybody ought to get 5 minutes. That's going to be 35 minutes for the council discussion alone. And then if somebody is at the end of their time and wants more time, they can ask Robert for it and he can decide if they need another minute or not. But the idea is to have everybody have a chance to speak uninterrupted.
I understand that, but my objection stands.
Okay. Anybody else have anything to say? Mary?
I just wanted to know if the 2 emails and letter regarding the streetscape were acknowledged as the receipted during the correspondence.
They were not, Mary. I didn't have all that information.
I didn't acknowledge them either, Mary.
So you didn't acknowledge it.
Do you want to do that now, Mary? This is, they were relevant to this item, I believe.
Yes, they were definitely relevant. There was the Caltrans, Mr. Frank Demling had sent his report and update on that on July the 24th to Mr. Murphy, and he sent it on to board members. Then we had a letter from ERIS Weaver, the executive director of the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition, and he said that the Caltrans plans were not following the GMAC or the Gualala Town plan regarding bicycle lanes, and that a share row and the way it's put together now is not following the laws.
Mary, Mary and Tom, could we just acknowledge the letters and who they were from for now?
And then Mary Sue Eitner wrote about the same thing and a couple of other things about the tall retaining walls and no winding walkways, etc. And I see that Mr. Rottermiller is attending the meeting, or was a minute ago, and was wondering if there would be any input from him regarding that. But I see he's disconnected.
We'll be doing that. We'll be doing that in the public comment if he's here. So
okay.
Yeah. There he is. Yes, there he is.
Okay, I'm going to start the hearing now. We'll start with Frank and then Naphele. I'm going to mute everybody but them. And after they're done, I'll take the floor and present the report for Robert and myself. And then after that, we'll open the public hearing. Each member of the public who wishes to speak should send me a chat or otherwise indicate that they want to speak. Again, if you're on the phone, you can hit *6. I believe that will work. I've never actually used that, so I don't know how it shows up on my end, but I guess we'll find out. So I'm going to mute all now, and then I'll turn on Frank and Naphele. Just a moment.
Thank you, Tom. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can, Frank, but I'll just make sure everybody else is muted. Okay, Frank, and where's Naphele? There she is. Naphele, you are able to unmute yourself when you're ready. Frank, do you want to go ahead and take the floor?
Oh, sure. And thanks, Tom. And I got to say, I really do appreciate how engaged the Gualala community is on the Streetscape project. As you know, back in October when we had our public meeting, we sought to find a compromise on an alternative that would allow for the elimination of on-street parking or keep on-street parking. We wanted to at least have the option to have that two-way continuous left turn lane in the future, but in order to keep the on-street parking, obviously that was not an option. So of course we had a somewhat of consensus by the community to keep the two traveled lanes, the bike lanes, and on-street parking on both sides of the road, which resulted in a 64-foot wide streetscape width. We took that back to design. They went ahead and, based on the digital terrain model, the topographic mapping, determined that based on the difference in elevation, that was going to require either additional right-of-way for fill on the back side of the sidewalk, or having to construct short retaining walls. On the west side, it would have been 0 to 3 feet, and on the east side, 0 to 5 feet. And I did provide in the email I sent out to the community the typical section that showed the stations, where those walls would be constructed, and what their heights would be. and you had a layout with that as well. Now, when I first saw that, when design presented that information to me, well, of course, my first thought was that is not going to fly with the community because it urbanizes the downtown area and it loses that rural character. So we have to look for another solution. So we need to go back to the community, let them know what we found and what our options are in the future. Now, you got to keep in mind that, you know, even if we didn't have the on-street parking and we had the continuous two-way left turn lane, we'd have retaining walls. So we have to think about that as well. The typical section that we discussed at the public meeting in October was going to allow for an interim solution to having the on-street parking until Surf Properties, John Bauer, could get the parking situation settled on properties. But even if that were to happen in the short term, there is going to be a need for retaining walls with that two-way continuous left turn lane. And I know that's a non-starter for the community because for a couple of reasons. You don't want to have that urbanized look, and also it takes away the opportunity to install vegetated strips or planter strips throughout the streetscape. So what we're going to do now is we feel that we have to come up with a number of other options that we can present to the community. So we're looking at different typical sections that we feel are worth considering. And we want to present those at a WebEx event, which is similar to a Zoom meeting, except that there's more security. And because we're doing this through a state platform, you know, we need that additional security with WebEx, but it's just similar to Zoom. So in this public meeting, WebEx public meeting, we're planning to present those different typical sections and discuss the pros and cons to each one of those sections, take input from the community. We recognize that there is a segment of the community that may not have internet access. So we are planning on sending out postcards to inform everyone in Gualala and down at Sea Ranch of this meeting on September 14th. And if they're not able to participate and they would like to provide input, we'll go ahead and provide them with the breakdown on the sections that we're looking at, what the pros and cons are, so they can provide input in that fashion. Now, after we present these options to the community, at the end of the discussion, we're able to do an online survey. So anybody that's participating in the WebEx event, you'll see a survey come up. They can check off which typical sections, which elements of the typical sections are most important to them, and the results are displayed immediately. And obviously that doesn't take into account the hard copy responses that we get from those community members that aren't able to participate via the internet. But at this point, we're really trying to find some middle ground. We recognize that there are some very strong opinions on both sides of the argument. And, you know, this would not be an issue if there were parking arrangements made for some other properties in particular, and I think we all know who. And it's unfortunate that we've been put in this position where we can't even look at the 64-foot streetscape width that has that two-way continuous left turn lane, because it would negate the landscape strips, the planter strips, and it would require retaining walls. So I think we're going to have to look at where do we put in left turn lanes that make sense and eliminate the two-way left turn lane that goes all the way through town, because that does present some issues on not just retaining walls, but additional right-of-way. So, you know, at this point, we're only looking to develop alternatives that we think make sense and the community would be willing to discuss and provide input on. And then once we get that input in this WebEx meeting and get feedback from those community members that are responding by hard copy mail, then we can start to develop, focus in on alternatives that really make sense for the community, because we do recognize that Gualala, it's the gateway to Mendocino County, and it's important to the community to maintain that rural character. And, we're committed to that. We, Caltrans, we're looking for other opportunities up and down the coast to, enhance the Mendocino coast from public access, coastal trail, bike lanes, etc. And this is no different. We're really seeking to find a compromise within the community, something that makes sense, something that maintains that rural character. And that's what I have, Tom.
Thanks, Frank. Naphele, you want to take the floor?
Sure. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So I think Frank did a great job of summarizing where we are in the project, the challenges that we are currently facing, unexpected challenges. It was hard to hear that, from the design people, that what we had been counting on was going to require these retaining walls, because we knew that the community would be concerned. Not only would they be retaining walls, but depending on the height of the retaining walls, they could also require handrails along the top of the retaining walls. So we've received several comments in the last few days. Frank and I have both received them. And so we are reading all of those comments that we received. A variety of different concerns have been expressed. And of course, as everyone knows, there's been a lot of public input on this. The workshop in October, we had nearly 200 people in attendance. And so lots of opinions on this project. One thing that I just wanted to mention tonight, sort of a recurring theme in some of those comments, was the idea that this project is going to create this sea of asphalt through Gualala. And so I do want to make a point of saying that what we're looking at now, less paving than we've been considering before. So this will, what we're considering now will help retain the rural nature of Gualala that we have heard loud and clear that the community wants. So the community virtual workshop in September will be a good opportunity for everybody to weigh in on these new options. Hopefully we'll get the kind of participation that we had at our last workshop in Gualala. I've actually found that with the virtual meetings, we sometimes, in other MCOG meetings, we have more attendance than we had when we were meeting in person. So hopefully people will take that opportunity to participate. Another thing that another aspect of the project that I wanted to mention is a grant application that MCOG is working on in partnership with Caltrans. We have funding for environmental design and the right-of-way for the project, but we don't yet have full funding for construction. And so we will be seeking a grant through the Active Transportation Program to secure that funding. That is a state grant that funds projects for non-motorized transportation. So most of you probably received something, an email that went out that had an attachment that explained how to use something called Street Story. Do I have the ability to share screen?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Oh, let me try again. Well, it's saying that it's disabled participant screen sharing. So
usually I would get a request that you're requesting to share. I'm not getting that request.
okay.
Is there something I can show for you?
Well, I was going to show people Street Story, but I can explain it. So in the attachment to the email that went out, there was a description of how to use this online tool called Street Story. One of the aspects that makes a project competitive under the active transportation program is safety. So we don't have a lot of actual accident history within the project limits. I believe there's one accident within the last 10 years involving a pedestrian. But we know there are a lot of near misses. We hear, we hear people describe experiences that they've had. So this online mapping tool called Street Story, it's actually hosted by UC Berkeley, is a way that we can capture some of those other safety issues that, because they don't result in an accident, they go unreported. So there's a link on the attachment that went out, and it is, if you've got internet access, it is pretty easy to use. You can click on that link, and then it will bring.
I just found
Yes.
Frank's email, so I've called up Street Story.
Thank you. Yes. So if you scroll to the bottom of that attachment, there will be a link right there. So you can go to Street Story, and it will ask you if you want location type or to see data. So if you want to enter data, so if you want to see what other people have reported, you could collect see data. If you want to report something yourself, you would select location type. And then specific location. Now you can just use your cursor and drop a pin. You can also zoom in using the plus and minus in the upper left. And then you can click where you have experienced safety problems, and then you can provide some information on what those safety problems are. Now, all of the data, I believe there's some basic screening that the people that run the website do before they make the information publicly available. But for the most part, all the data that is provided is publicly available to see. So then you can, explain what the situation was, whether it was a near miss or a hazard. And then I believe after you choose one of those items, it gives you an opportunity to describe the situation a little more. So we want to encourage the community to use this tool. I did actually, before the meeting, I was on there looking, and there have been several things reported already, so that's great. People are using it. And we think that it'll help the grant application, because regardless of what kind of, what we ultimately end up with as far as the alternatives, we know that we will need funding. And the unfortunate reality is that due to the pandemic and budget shortfalls that we're expecting statewide, we are not anticipating having any kind of local funding that could fund construction on this project in the next several years. So we are really hoping to make this grant application as competitive as possible. So this is something that the community can do to support that. So please take a look at that, and then we will look forward to hearing community input at the workshop in September. I don't think that I have anything else to add, but I'm happy to answer questions.
I'm sorry. We will hold questions until later when we have public comment. The public can ask questions. The council members can ask questions, or they can comment directly on the issues. So we'll get through all the presentations first, and
Okay.
we'll go to questions. So I think you'll be interested to stick around anyway.
Okay. Oh, Tom, one other thing, just a Zoom pointer for you. When people press *6, if they're just on the phone, it shows up as a raised hand in the participant panel.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. I haven't seen that yet. So it's just one I haven't done yet.
So that's that concludes what I have to report. Looks like Robert is trying to speak.
Let me see, Robert. Robert, you're muted yourself.
I will also add that the grant applications for the active transportation program are due September 15th. So we have about a month left to get that wrapped up. It is a cumbersome grant application. So the sooner people can get information to us, the better. We would really appreciate it.
What was that date again, Naphele?
September 15th.
Wow. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead. I'm going to mute all I hear. Naphele, are you back on mute? Good. Okay. Now, I want to share a screen. This is probably going to take about 15 minutes. And then after I finish this, we'll seek public comment. And I'm going to start with Una Wirkebau in that public comment period, just so she can be ready, because we do mention her in this presentation. I think Bill Merget's also mentioned. So if he's not, he can also comment. I see several people who I've gotten letters from in the last few days. I'm assuming they'll want to comment. But first, I just want to explain what we're going to do here. A couple of months ago, the council had kind of a heated discussion. And part of it was because Robert and I have been working on this thing intensely for the past year as the Gualala Community Action Plan Committee. We've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on this, met with scores of people, and there have been tense discussions, there have been nervous discussions, there have been angry discussions. So I want to urge everybody here to remain calm. We have, over the course of the year, come to certain conclusions. And I'd like to go ahead and give you a PowerPoint that'll take about 15 minutes and tell you what the findings are of our committee after this year. And then we can discuss them later. So I'm sharing the screen now, and I'm going to start the presentation. Robert and I worked on this over the last few days. And I want to say this is based on information that we received prior to tonight. The last we heard was what we heard at the town plan, that there would be 2 lanes of parking, 2 lanes for traffic, sidewalks, bike lanes. So that's about it, and no landscaping. I'm glad to hear that that's in flux, and we'll see where this goes. So by way of introduction, planning for the upgrade of Highway 1 began a quarter century ago. By 2002, with a lot of hard work by hundreds of people and officials, the board and the Coastal Commission adopted the Gualala Town Plan with the primary goal of ensuring that the future development better integrates with the town's natural surroundings. Since then, there have been scores of meetings, town halls, reports, studies, surveys, negotiations, compromises, and many, many intense debates. The project parameters have been adjusted, but the clear intent of the town plan has always remained sacrosanct through all those years, to make Highway 1 a scenic element of the Gualala townscape. It is in that spirit that we humbly offer our findings for the latest proposed design, which we called Caltrans Alt 3, as Frank did in his email. So we offer these respectfully. These are our honest findings. I must say that I certainly had no impressions of this project until I met Frank Demling a year ago, just about now. And these are findings that we've come to conclusions on that year. Finding 1, Alt 3, as it existed, would violate the Gualala Town Plan. The Highway 1 streetscape is a centerpiece of the town plan, and the goals for it are clearly spelled out: to preserve and enhance the rural coastal character of the town of Gualala and to better integrate future development with natural surroundings. It's goal number 1 in our town plan. Improvements of Highway 1 corridor shall be required to help make Highway 1 a scenic element of the Gualala townscape. Town plan, part of the Mendocino County Code, requires no on-highway parking for safety and aesthetics, a center turn lane to enhance safety and reduce congestion, landscaping to reflect the natural environment, sidewalks to encourage walking through town, and separated bike lanes to improve safety and ease congestions. As we understood it, all three excludes most town elements. There's no the low maintenance landscaping is gone. The center turn lane is gone, at least for now. For the foreseeable future is, I think, the way it was at the town meeting. Off-highway parking is gone. There'd be 2 lanes through the entire town. The scenic element, natural surroundings, gone. There would be 64 feet of concrete and asphalt. There was no landscaping in this project last time I looked at it. Separated bike lines are threatened because of the email Frank sent last week saying that we have retaining walls, or one possibility is we could do away with the bike lanes. This has touched a lot of nerves, I know. And owner choice of parking, which Robert and I understood from 4 phone calls with Frank prior to our vote at the council, is gone. Oh, this streetscape at the bottom here is basically what we understand the project would look like, the way it was proposed at the town hall. Finding 2, all 3 does not qualify for an exception under the town plan. The exception clause over on the right with the blue headline says exceptions to the strict applications of these standards may be granted by the county with prior approval of the Caltrans district director, where existing development, site topography, or physical constraints mandate a greater or lesser right of way. It's very specific. Now,
I'm sorry, are you looking at a presentation? What are you referring to?
I'm referring to the town plan. And I'm going to put you back on mute, Lloyd. We agreed to these rules. So that exception clause is in the town plan. Prior adjustments to the streetscape plan were permitted under criteria for exceptions that are defined in the town plan. However, all 3 does not qualify for an exception under this rule. Caltrans previously demonstrated in Alt 1 and Alt 2 that there are no physical impediments requiring changes to the right-of-way or the project elements. The picture of Alt 2 here in the middle had all the town plan elements in a 60-foot right-of-way. We voted on this over a year ago on the council and chose Alt 2 because it was more favorable to the surf, if you'll recall. Further, the addition of parking lanes that are not in the town plan does not justify exclusion of elements that are in the town plan. Caltrans made changes explaining that Chief Planner Julia Acker said there was wiggle room in the town plan. However, we spoke with Acker in June and she has neither seen nor signed off on any plan. She said that she would ensure Caltrans isn't running carte blanche, and of course we know and love Julia, and I don't want to sound accusatory, Frank, or Naphele. I was encouraged by what Frank said tonight, and there's good faith here, I'm sure. Finding 3, MCOG, Caltrans, and the SURF ignored the interim constraint plan in 2019. The SURF market and the Mendocino Council of Governments agreed in 2013 to allow the SURF to continue to use highway parking until the SURF Center parking lot is complete. That's called the Interim Constraint Plan, or ICP. While it's not the preferred option, MCOG said at the time, the interim plan, quote, will be implemented, unquote, if the SURF Center lot is not finished when the streetscape project was ready to roll. Basically, it would allow on-highway parking to continue near the SURF while the rest of the project is built. Sidewalks and bike lanes would be added at the SURF after the parking lot was ready. In September 2019, GMAC proposed a variation of the ICP as a compromise, ensuring uninterrupted parking along the SURF Center properties. A phased project might cost more, but it would cost considerably less than all 3, which involves acquiring an additional parking lane and building the retaining walls we talked about. The interim project would honor the town plan and the SURF County agreement. If the ICP is not being honored, we'll need to talk about that. We find the county and Caltrans should respect some form of an ICP to ensure parking for the SURF for a limited interim. And there's, on the diagram, you see what it would look like. Over on the left there, you see a parking lane, a bike lane, travel. This has a turn lane. It would not be a turn lane at first in our process. That would be another travel lane. The travel lane on the right would be a parking lane, and then a bike lane and a pathway. Finding 4, getting chats here. I can't really answer all these. No comment. We'll be doing questions later, Sharon. And Frank, wiggle room had to do with the right-of-way only. Yes. Okay, Sherry, thank you. Apparently I was not sharing the screen.
No.
Finding 4, a professional marketing campaign divided our community. In 2019, the surf market launched a professional marketing campaign with what we view as misleading information. The slick media blitz stated the market might close without on-highway parking. The campaign included mass emails, social media ads, political lobbying, and letters to officials and the media, triggering what surf market owner Steve May himself called a nasty community fight. But the market failed to disclose the 2013 interim constraint plan that guaranteed on-highway parking, or the Surf Center's 12-year-old plan for a 90-plus space parking lot at the market. A concurrent smear campaign attacked Streetscape Committee members and GMAC as a whole, undermining this council's diligent efforts to resolve the issues and unite the community. These scare tactics prompted many customers to write letters that unknowingly echoed the hollow claims. A national petition was signed by over 1,000 people, including hundreds from out of state. Caltrans said the resulting division in the community meant that it could not build Alt 1 or Alt 2, which followed the town plan. And to this day, Caltrans relies on an email distribution list that is dominated by those who wrote letters based on the market's dubious claims. I'm pleased to hear that there'll be postcards sent out to all the residents in the project area. We recommend Caltrans, we were going to recommend Caltrans restart its outreach effort to expand and include more of our community. And I'm glad to hear that from Frank tonight. Finding 5, all 3 ignores 17 years of planning due to one fatally flawed town hall. The town plan vision had many solid steps, and these are just a very few of them. 2002, the approval by the board and the Coastal Commission. 2005, MCOG applies the exception to the right-of-way to narrow it to 64 feet from 80. In 2012, the Gualala Town Council reduced the right-of-way to 60 feet with constraints, due to constraints. In 2013, MCOG and SURF agreed to the ICP compromise that guarantees SURF parking. And in 2018, a town hall confirmed the town plan concept with the crowd reflecting the town makeup. I believe Frank also chaired that meeting. And all 3 had just one faulty step, a dysfunctional 2019 town hall with no sound system, no projector, poor handouts, and not enough of them. The options were not numbered in the handouts, so when Frank described them, people didn't know what they were looking at. There was a loss of control by Caltrans at the meeting. There was bullying that prevented civil discussion. There was a jeering mob that prevented GMAC from presenting its compromise to the crowd. The GMAC compromise proposal guaranteed parking for the surf market, the key topic that brought over 200 surf supporters to the meeting, but the crowd blocked its presentation. A GMAC survey before the event found that 89% of our local residents supported the compromise as long as the surf's parking was assured. Finding 6, off-highway parking would help our businesses, not hurt them. Opponents to the town plan claim the loss of on-highway parking would hurt local businesses. We find the opposite is true. Many opponents cited this concern in their letters to Caltrans, and it was repeated often in news accounts and hearings. Caltrans noted verbally there were other studies showing positive benefits for business, but never presented them publicly. We found no basis for this claim that off-highway parking would hurt businesses in Gualala. To the contrary, most business experts we spoke to believed Alt 3 design would irreparably damage Gualala's fragile ecotourism-based industry. Business leaders at roundtables at GMAC Housing and Economic Development also reached a consensus that the highway project should follow the town plan. And I'm quoting Una here. Una is the leader of Move 2030, the county's economic resiliency program, who says Gualala's appearance is critical to the future of ecotourism in Mendocino County. We can't let it look like a truck stop. We need a sense of nature and beauty from Gualala to Westport. Finding 7, off-highway parking is plentiful and preferred in Gualala. Opponents claim on-highway parking is needed. Not so. There are 600 plus off-highway spaces that most customers and employees use now. Another 200 are planned. Another 200 after that are possible. The red lines here mark existing off-highway lots, while the orange lines mark planned or potential parking areas. This map shows the south end of town. If you're wondering what those yellow dots are, that's where I estimated you could park cars. By my count, maybe Frank has a better number, there are only 2 dozen to 3 dozen possible parking spaces in this area on the highway. But we already have over 600 off the highway. And you can see in this aerial photo that came out with all 2, which is pictured here, that most cars park in those parking lots. There's lots of room, and there are almost no cars parked in the highway in these pictures. I don't think there are any. This is the north end of town. Finding 8, sharrows cannot safely replace separated bike lanes in Gualala. This is one of the possibilities Frank raised in his email. I want to explain these 2 things. A separated bike lane allows kids, seniors, and visitors to ride safely on the highway. It's not really meant for the people who are riding down the coast a couple of 100 miles. Those people can handle the traffic in Gualala, although they do get tired when they get to town. Their heads swivel around and they are at greater risk. This is to get kids so that they can ride safely to the school bus or a friend's house, that seniors can get health benefits from riding to the post office or stores, that visitors can visit different parts of the town more safely. A lot of people show up with their bikes and their kids' bikes. It's to help the environment with cleaner air and less congestion on the highway. One less car on the highway means cleaner air, and one less car you have to avoid on the highway. For business, stores get more visitors when visitors can ride to them. And it helps save speeds, because cyclists and cars and trucks can move at their own chosen speed. Now, on the bottom, you see a sharrow and a truck going by. Imagine that that's the traffic lane. Would you allow your child to ride in that? It forces cyclists to share the 11-foot lanes with cement mixers and gravel trucks from Bedrock. They're dangerous. They're age limited. Kids and seniors won't ride in those, and I don't blame them. They're impractical because cyclists heading north would go at 8 to 12 miles per hour versus 25 miles per hour for cars and trucks, because it's a slight uphill all the way through town. The southbound cyclist going downhill would still only go 8 to 15 miles per hour because many are laden down with packs and other things. There are legal issues. We heard the Sonoma County Bike Coalition mentioned, and they've already written to say that sharrows in Gualala might violate the Safe Streets policies, setting up potential liability issues. Finding 9, the expensive 4th lane on the highway is something we can't afford after COVID. Mendocino County and the state are facing soaring budget shortfalls due to COVID. There's been no discussion involving GMAC of the financial impact of adding a parking lane that we truly don't need in town. Adding a lane costs big dollars because it means acquiring additional land along the highway for parking. It means buying land elsewhere to offset the environmental impact of the land paved for highway parking. It means providing taxpayer parking to private businesses, which is not county policy and is a gift of public funds. And the cost per space on the highway will likely be well into the 5 figures. Finding 10, our last slide. All 3's lack of landscaping shatters Gualala's eco-friendly image. The 4-lane all 3 is really a barren 64 feet of asphalt and concrete from what we've heard so far. If that's changed, we haven't heard about that. If there's a 3-lane all 3 was 54 feet, plus, there was a 3-lane all 3 that was 54 feet of pavement plus 6 feet of landscaping with 3 feet on either side. All 3 was described as a sterile strip mall by Bill Morgette, who I think is going to be speaking tonight. It would create I've already repeated some of this, but it would run the length of town from Old State Highway to Ocean Drive. It would be nearly 3 times the width the current 22-foot blacktop and traffic lanes. I don't think people are really ready for that. And all 2 is 54 feet with 6 feet of landscaping. So that's the comparison there. Now, the options before the council tonight, after we take public comment, and I want the public to know this too, is to do nothing. We could budget and build the 4-lane roadway with retaining walls and abandon 2 decades of planning. We could make more trade-offs and build the 4-lane highway with smaller retaining walls, but maybe lose landscaping and bike lanes, and that's abandoning the town plan. Or we could follow the town plan, build a less costly 3-lane road with a parking lane, maintain the parking lane for now, until sometime in the unforeseeable future, Caltrans determines we need the turn lane. We'd have native landscaping and bike paths, and that would allow a path to the town plan. Or there may be other options, and we can discuss those. But now it's time to hear from the public. So if anybody wants to speak, now would be the time to raise your hand or send me a message. I will start by calling on Una. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. I'm going to unmute Una if I can find her. There she is.
Hi. So I'm going to be speaking later as well. But I just really wanted to say, as someone who's new to Mendocino County and who's lived all over the world and has worked in communities to enhance their perception and public space, as well as increase residential enjoyment of their community, I love Gualala, and I think that it has so much to offer. And I can say that I was just in your community a month or so ago on a busy Saturday where there was a market going on. And as I came into town driving north, so coming in from Sonoma County, and after driving by, you know, countless miles of gorgeous scenery, coming into town, it would be amazing to have welcome signage, and I know that that's something that we can discuss in the future, but having this wonderful market on the side where you had cars and kids and bikes and no real signage of where parking was, and a lot of chaos going on, to me, your plan that you have would be so absolutely amazing because you already have these great attributes. And I found tons of parking, quite frankly. I did not park on the side of the road. I found that there were lots of opportunities in many different retail parking lots that just needed signage so people knew that they were there. And to have shaded trees and landscaping and shrubbery would just be such an amazing asset for the countless people that are already coming to your community and to want to stay and wander around for a little bit longer. So I'm really supportive of what you're all debating. I can understand how it can be conflicted at times, but with an outsider's eyes looking at your small community and how much it enhances Mendocino as a whole, I'm very supportive of having limited side street parking because I personally find it extremely dangerous and saw a number of almost near crashes just in the short time I was there. And that you have lots of parking, it's just a matter of signage to allow people to know that. And I want to also thank you all for your hard work and dedication. I can only tell you that I've chatted with Tom numerous times, as well as a number of other people that are on this call, and you're all so passionate about your community. It just makes my heart sing. So thank you.
Just sending a message. I'll be right with you. Okay, Bill Merget, I cited you as well in this report. Would you care to comment?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, Tom. I wanted to share with everyone on the call and with GMAC my appreciation for the effort that's gone on through 2 decades or more with efforts with the initial Gualala Town Plan. And with that in mind, and after I saw the email from Mr. Demling, I wrote to a number of Caltrans and others, many of whom are on this call, a letter. And in it, I'm going to just read it to you, and I think you'll see where our position is. I am writing to you on behalf of the Gualala Cypress Village Homeowners Association. We are comprised of 12 homeowners and their families located just off of Ocean Avenue at the northern end of the Gualala Downtown Enhancement Project. Recent correspondence from Mr. Frank Demling has prompted this writing, as it surprisingly informed us of yet another potential degradation of the Gualala Town Plan. For many years, our membership and its board of directors has taken an active interest in the Gualala Town Plan and its subsequent iterations. We have signed petitions, written letters to GMAC and the local newspaper, attended GMAC meetings, Caltrans workshops, and various related discussions. All of this has been done in an effort to support the Gualala Town Plan requirements of ADA compliant, excuse me, I have an interruption. All of this has been done in an effort to support the Gualala Town Plan requirements of ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the street, native landscaping, separated bike paths, and 3 lanes through downtown Gualala. We are imploring you and representatives of other governmental entities to adhere to our Gualala Town Plan's requirements to make Highway 1 a scenic element of the Gualala landscape while enhancing safety, decreasing congestion, and encouraging people to walk about. This email is intentionally brief, as others have offered clarifying and compelling arguments on behalf of the Gualala Town Plan. Notably, Mary Sue Ittner's thoughtful email of yesterday, displayed below, and an opinion piece in the August 2020 Lighthouse Peddler, which is attached. We fully support the viewpoints offered in these 2 readings. Sincerely, Bill Merget, President, Board of Directors, Gualala Cypress Village Homeowners Association. So this is an issue clearly that our HOA has dealt with over years and is firmly in support of that which has been laid out by Tom rather eloquently at tonight's meeting. And I am encouraged to hear that Frank is going to be looking in September 14th on the WebEx to some alternatives that may yet bring us all into alignment. So thank you.
Hi, I think I'm up.
Harmony? Is that you, Harmony?
Hi.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to echo the last 2 speakers' words on this, and I agree completely that we need to follow the town plan as much as possible. And I'm really encouraged that Caltrans is looking for alternatives that retain more of the small town feel and get us back on track. And I really appreciate, Tom, your PowerPoint that laid out where we went astray, and hopefully we can get back together as a community. I have never understood the parking problem. I think it's an illusion that some people hold very strongly to, but it's good to walk, it's good to get out, and I think if it's been proven too that people do it once it's a beautiful place to walk, we'll all have an improved town and it won't hurt business. But that's just my feeling on the subject. Thank you for all of your hard work. on this.
Thank you, Harmony. I don't see any other hands up, but I wanted to see if Bob Rudemeller, Pam McLean, or I guess Kathleen, is she still with us? Those are the other people in the public I see here. Oh, and Ron Doss was here. He may have left. Pam, anybody want to raise their hand there or send me a text on the chat function? Okay, I don't see anybody else who wants to comment tonight except for Robert. I'll give him the floor for a moment. You need to unmute your line, Robert.
So I also wanted to weigh in a little bit. This was a difficult presentation, but there were all truths, and I was the fact checker on a lot of this stuff, and we just wanted to get this all out into the public because we're only going to be able to do this once, and is how I look at it. And I wanted to give kind of a streetscape perspective viewed in its totality over time. And I wanted to, beginning with the start of the Gualala Town process in the mid-90s, it was widely felt that Highway 1 through Gualala needed a redesign. So many years in the making, we collectively viewed a prospective or a progressive streetscape plan as being the ideal solution for our coastal Main Street transportation corridor. A progressive plan that would lead us away from the car-centric approach and behavioral patterns we have of parking in front of and driving from one store to the next within a small town along Highway 1. A progressive plan which would minimize the presence of parked cars within our Highway 1 shopping corridor and offered needed cohesion. So it was completely surprising to me that we have literally gone backwards from our progressive mindset and literally looking to do the status quo that just regular unplanned cities do along their economic corridors. So the sense of this wonderful little welcoming town as you enter Mendocino County from the south was what we were all striving for, or as it seemed, after the many years of conceptual planning. And then last year came along, and little did we know that as we were approaching a community meeting in the fall season of 2019, that there would be a social media blitz by one downtown business owner that has led us to a complete ideological reversal of what would have been, or what will be, what should be a very unique, functional, forward-thinking Gualala streetscape plan.
Okay, Robert, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, we were going to take you last in the order, but since you've already spoken, we'll go to Sharon Meyer next. Let me turn your mic back on, Sharon. You need to turn yours on at your end. And Robert, you're going back on mute.
I'd like to hold my comments to the end. I don't disagree with the need to adhere to the town plan. I find that the plan that was put forward in the email this week with 5-foot retaining walls that I couldn't even see over somewhat appalling.
Sharon, I'm going to count this as your time if you go ahead. So go ahead.
No, Tom, no. You're trying to stifle comment and I won't have it.
Well, we have a rule for this discussion, Mr. Chairman.
I objected to the rule. I objected to the rule. I see this as a stacked meeting. It's the same way you complained that town hall meeting was a stacked meeting. With people brought there to express one point of view, you brought in your people to express your point of view. You have to let people speak. I reserve the rest of my time.
We are not reserving time in this hearing.
Yes, we are.
Please finish your speech.
Take a vote on that one way or the other. Tom, quit trying to micromanage everybody.
Mr. Chairman, would you intervene, please?
Did we vote on not reserving our time?
Let's let Sharon, like I said to begin with, have her 3 minutes up to maybe 5, and that's it.
And I reserve the last 4 minutes of the up to 5 until later.
We are not reserving time.
Just so you can speak last, or what is the issue there? I'm
still drafting out my comments, Robert. What's wrong with reserving time? Tom does not own this commission. He does not rule it with an iron hand. We vote by consensus.
I said what I said to begin with, and then now we're changing the rules.
We're not changing rules. We had no vote whatsoever on reserving time.
I asked for some agreement on this to begin with, so that I went out of order. I went early because I thought there was going to be no more comments. I wanted to conclude with that comment. And we did say,
I believe that, you know, we did agree on this. The majority of the council accepted the rules. Sharon did dissent.
We accepted the rules. We accepted the rules of time limitation. We did not accept any kind of rule, nor was there any discussion on reserving time.
No, we said we'd go in sequence. We'd get 5 minutes each, and you can use that time as you want. Do not talk about reserving time.
Tom, just let Sharon talk later.
I'm going to mute everybody. Everybody needs to calm down. I'm going to unmute Robert so he can make a ruling here.
I would like to hear your comment in full, Sharon. And then at the end, I will allow some more time if necessary. That's how we said it.
At the end of this comment, not at the end of the meeting.
We've had public comment, correct?
I will be writing a letter to the Board of Supervisors complaining about the way this process proceeds.
I'm going to unmute Robert again. I think he's said clearly that he has a process here, and I'd like to hear what it is. Robert, can you comment?
I was trying to comment, I'm sorry. Okay, I think we all need to take a step back here and settle down, first of all. This is all good input, okay? From everybody. I don't know why you're getting pushed out of shape a little bit, Sherry. I just don't know. But there was a process I kind of alluded to. I'm not the best or the most articulate speaker. That's why I've deferred to Tom on a lot of this stuff. But we had a organized plan here, which was to let everybody speak for roughly, well, the presentation's 15 minutes each. And then the public was going to be able to weigh in, whereby I said, let everybody speak for maybe 3 minutes. Maybe we can go a little bit beyond our bylaws rules of 3 minutes, because this is such a important subject matter. This is the basis for anything that's for our entire town plan in reality. So why can't we just all speak our say, and not to do this reserving time for at the end, we speak what we want to say about this presentation and about the latest plan that Caltrans has presented us with. And then if you need some additional time at the end, I may grant it, but let's hear the comments on what's been presented so far. That's it for now. Okay, can I call on somebody in the audience?
No, it's, we've concluded the public hearing.
Okay.
We will go to George next.
Yeah, Tom, earlier on in your presentation, the shared documents weren't being shown. I couldn't see the documents or plans you were referring to. But generally speaking, the things that I recall, I was not on the council back when a lot of this discussion originated. I was on the working group. In fact, there were 2 working group meetings that were led by Frank. I noticed that most of the people in that working group were a good representation of the community. It was pretty diverse. We had business owners, we had customers of the market, we had property owners. There was a lot of input that Frank received from a diverse group of people, and it was a pretty large room in that working group. I don't remember exactly how many people were in there, but it was on the order of probably 25 or 30 people crammed into that room. And I think Frank, when he presented what he thought was a consensus from the working group and then asked for input from the rest of the community, there seemed to be overwhelming support for it. And I noticed in the crowd, there were some people that were from, the market. There were people who were employees, people who were customers. There are also other business owners and other members like myself who were just residents in Gualala. Also, Gualala doesn't have a town council, by the way. There is no Gualala town council. I think we needed to hear more from Frank this evening. I'm more concerned about what he is seeing as constraints that keep him from basically being able to deliver on the conceptual design that everybody thought was agreed upon previously. That said, I think there also is from the GMAC side of this, in terms of what our role is, I think we have to look back at the town plan and look at the intent of the plan and the restrictions that were developed long ago. The county has not expressed a lot of interest in updating the town plan, even though there are people like myself and other colleagues of mine on the council who think the town plan needs to be basically overhauled and updated. It hasn't happened. It is a reality, and it does carry the vision of people from many years back who had the notion that that streetscape should have certain things that would be carried forward, not the least of which are bike lanes, landscaping, those kinds of things. I would like to hear from Frank his reaction to the requirements of the town plan and how that fits in with some of the technical constraints that he's encountered, not the least of which is having to put in retaining walls. And I was even more surprised when Naphele mentioned handrails. I mean, I can't think of anything that would destroy the look and feel of this town other than retaining walls and handrails. But at the same time, I didn't move to Gualala to live in Emeryville. Downtown Emeryville is the picture of what the whole streetscape design that Caltrans implements in communities all over California. But nevertheless, we do have those public law requirements. We do have the town plan. I would like to know from Frank how he sees that being part of his implementing a conceptual design. I think we need to hear more from Frank than from GMAC or council members. I would like to hear something being proposed as opposed to all of us having our opinions, or whether they're shared or not on the council. It's just my opinion.
Thank you, George. We're going to let me just give the order of things. We're going to go to Don, Lloyd. I'll speak again. And Mr. Youngling, you'll have another chance to speak and determine whether or not you want to have Frank comment before we take a motion. Let's go to Don right now. Oh, let me reset the clock, Don.
Okay.
Go.
All right, thanks, Tom.
And thank you to the council members for keeping your remarks fairly brief here.
All right. Basically, I'd like to express my appreciation for Tom and Robert for putting that report together and providing a summary of basically where we're at in this thing. I'd also like to thank Frank for attending and giving us a bit of an update, although I kind of agree with George. I'd like to hear, more detail on what possible options he's thinking of. However, I think it is a good idea that they're planning another virtual community meeting, so to speak, in September. I think that's important. I'd also like to comment about, the time limitations that we agreed to. I think that's just pretty much normal with a body of government like us. It's normal in Congress. It's pretty much normal everywhere. Each of us, we have our opinions, and we're given a certain amount of time to express them, not unlimited time, typically. And I'm fine with that. I think that's how we kind of move the discussion forward. And we're not alone in doing something like this. As far as my personal opinion on what the streetscape should be, it's pretty much in alignment with the town plan and the need for bike lanes, sidewalk, and ideally native landscaping, which would really, I think, advance the look of the town. And since we are, let's face it, dependent on tourism, for better or worse, and I think for the most part it's for the better, it can only be a positive thing, I think, for our community. And some of you know that, I'm a cyclist myself. I ride through town almost every day. I do, just a bike ride to stay in shape, and I ride through town. I ride out Old Gualala Road along the river to the Green Bridge, and maybe further sometimes, maybe up to the county park on the other side of the river occasionally. And I do have to be extra alert going through town because of the traffic going on and off the highway. Whereas when I'm not in town, I'm just cruising down the road. I'm just focusing straight ahead. That's kind of the way cycling works. When you're in a congested area, you have to be more alert because there are more risks of you being hit by a car. So to me, bike lanes are absolutely essential in any kind of town plan. And when I saw Frank's email regarding, well, we may have to eliminate bike lane or both bike lanes and provide sharrows instead and build the retaining walls, I was thinking, wow, there's no way I can support something like that. But again, of course, I'm only one member of the community, and everybody else has a right to provide their input and their opinion on this as well. But that's where I'm at on this. I think a plan that adheres, for the most part, to the town plan, the vision that people have had for this for many, many years, I think is the best way forward. And providing, for example, the surf.
Fucking stuff is recorded.
And for example, providing the surf market with temporary parking makes a lot of sense going forward. So that's pretty much, what I would like to add tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Let me just stop the clock. And then I actually skipped Melissa before. So Melissa, you'll be next. And you can go ahead.
Okay, one of the biggest reasons I joined the council was I wanted input on the town plan. The year before I moved here, I saw the ICO article about it, and I said, woohoo! Yes. I want meandering sidewalks. I want nice, wide, meandering sidewalks, wide enough so that a couple of wheelchairs can pass each other going both directions. And I want the native plants, no non-native invasives. I want planting in the meandering sidewalk. And to me, that's the most important thing, because right now you're taking your life in your hands. If I want to walk downtown, it's like, no, I don't think so. It's dangerous, just extremely dangerous to try and walk. I have done it, and it's like I cringe every time I hear a car go by, because there's absolutely.
Melissa, we lost you there.
It's just, I want the meandering sidewalks with plantings, and I want it native planting and non-invasive. Get rid of the ivy. Get rid of the thrice be damned pampas grass. Love of God. That's it. That's all I needed to say.
Thank you. Lloyd?
So I have a different point of view about this. I think that the meeting of 2019 included a lot of people that had honest opinions about the landscape, about the streetscape project. And they presented those ideas fairly and openly. And it was a resounding voice from the community that said that they wanted this plan. I understand that we're losing some things from the town plan, and I'd prefer to have those back. I think that's a good idea. But I think the approach, Tom, that you're taking to this is very similar to what Steve May did with his media campaign. You've had a lot of people send in letters with your ideas. These are ideas that you've been stating for a month, for several months. So, and then you're ruling this meeting and not allowing people to speak. And I think that's entirely inappropriate. And with that, I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Sharon. Thank you.
All right, we have a couple of issues here. I'm gonna put Lloyd back on hold. And I'm gonna ask Robert to address them. First of all, I'd like to say that these are rules that we agreed to at the top of the meeting. I am not running this meeting. I am not ruling this meeting. I am the moderator. And I am doing what I've been asked to do, what we agreed to, at the start of the meeting. And so I'd also like to note Naphele and Frank have asked to speak. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'd like to give them an opportunity to comment. And I'd also like Mr. Youngling to talk about this issue of yielding or reserving time again. I think you already said that you can't reserve time. You get your 5 minutes and that's it. But I'd like you to rule on that.
Let's listen to further comment from Frank if he wishes to do so, and Naphele.
Great. We'll take them in that order. Thank you. And then would you please comment on the other issue after they're done?
I'll try to do my best. Yeah.
I also would like to hear from Frank and Naphele, so let's go there. Frank, you're up.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, and I understand where there's so much controversy with a number of suggestions that have been put forth by several members of the community. And I first want to let everyone know that I'm a cyclist too. I put in about 5,000 miles a year. I understand the dangers out there with cycling, and I understand the benefits as well. I have to be very careful as the project manager because my responsibility is to listen to all stakeholders and try to strike a balance. That's sometimes difficult. I find that's typically the case up and down the Mendocino coast on all my projects. Trying to maintain that balance with the community and keep my own personal opinions off of the table. But I got to say that my own opinion on this is a 50-foot typical section that allows for two 11-foot lanes and the 1-foot buffer to the bike lanes with the 6-foot sidewalk and the 2-foot planter strip, I think is ideal. And there are a couple cases where, for example, if you look at the north end of the surf properties, you put in a left turn lane going into surf properties, and then at the south end, an exit point going southbound. And even some consideration, I know there's been some talk about putting in a roundabout at the very south end of the town to allow traffic to actually circle about and come back into town. So there are some options here, and time-wise, funding is out there, and there's still a big question mark on funding, not just from MCOG's perspective, but also from Caltrans, because everyone recognizes what is going on with this pandemic and how it will impact funding for transportation projects in the future. I can think back in 2010 when we had economy and staff was put on furloughs, and we ended up putting about 30% of our projects on the shelf. That has not happened yet. It may, it's too hard to tell at this point. But, I'm really trying to listen to everyone's input and find a solution that really, brings the community together. But at the same time, when I first saw what design provided me with the retaining walls, it definitely, it hit me. I'm not in favor of urbanizing any portion of the Minnesota coast. It needs to maintain that rural character. That's what makes it so distinct. So I'm looking for ways to get a streetscape as narrow as possible, but provide functionality that does give the businesses access that they need, but at the same time provides a safe environment for cyclists and pedestrians. And so I've got a number of suggestions that I'll be presenting on September 14th, and we'll be getting input from the community. But ultimately, this is going to be up to the community and MCOG. I'm trying to do my best here to facilitate and provide whatever expertise I can, and really look for input from the community that maybe hasn't been considered, because you cannot discount the opinions of anyone in the community. Everyone has to be considered, and that's the job of a project manager. All stakeholders' opinions matter. That's all I have, Tom.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. Naphele, you're up.
Thank you for another opportunity to speak. So, first I want to say that, like Frank said, this is a project for the community. Yes, it's an MCOG funded project. It's a Caltrans implemented project, but it is a Gualala community project. As we've talked about tonight, we've had some unexpected constraints that we're trying to work with now. The idea of coming here tonight was, to share those constraints and try to find ways to still move forward with a project that works within those constraints and still honors what the community wants. We don't have to do this project. Tom, in your presentation, the slide that says an option was to do nothing, but to do nothing would really be to do nothing. We could just not have a project. I don't think that's what anybody wants. It's not what I want, but we do have to acknowledge that there are varied opinions in the community. And so I want to say that you also mentioned that community meeting, you referred to it as dysfunctional, the well-attended community workshop in October of 2019. Of course, there were some challenges with that meeting. We didn't have enough handouts. We probably could have benefited from a sound system, but the reason that we didn't have enough handouts and that a sound system would have been beneficial is because we had such great attendance. We weren't expecting 200 people to show up. We weren't prepared for 200 people to show up, but it was wonderful that 200 people showed up. You can't discount the opinions that were expressed that night because differ from the small group of people that are speaking tonight. I agree with a lot of the things that have been said tonight, and I think that we can address a lot of those things. We can move forward a lot of those concepts, but I think it's really important not to just discount the opinions of the other people that came to that workshop. I have looked back at the past planning efforts to see how much public participation was involved in those, and although they were long, extensive processes, they didn't have a large number of people turn out and participate. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the opinions that were expressed at that workshop and in the working group leading up to that workshop. There was a lot of hard work on the part of Caltrans that went into hosting the working group and that workshop. And I don't think it's fair to categorize them as dysfunctional. So I'm hopeful that we'll have more good community input coming up in September. We are glad to, hear from GMAC tonight. And I hope that we can arrive at a project that works within the constraints, like I said, unexpected constraints, and still can meet the needs of the community as a whole. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Naphele. Robert, would you like to comment on whether we should allow more time for any of the council members?
Those that haven't spoken, it would be nice to hear from them.
I have not spoken yet, but before we do you want to give Sharon another minute or two?
I would like to hear from everyone. And I'm sorry Sharon didn't take her time, but if you'd like to speak now, Sharon, please, Sherry, please do. I'm not hearing anything from Sherry. She's speaking.
Yeah, neither am I. I've asked her to unmute.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate that concession. I want to echo Lloyd's comments about the way this meeting was set up. My concern with and refusal to acknowledge the attempt to impose certain rules was based on the fact that I have seen those rules used before. You used them to silence Melissa in her concern about the bylaws, and I see you using them again tonight to try to stifle discussion with views that you don't agree with or support, which is not what this council is supposed to be about. I share the concerns that we have about this proposal that was going forward. I am concerned, and it's a basis for something to be discussed later, about comments that come out in what are supposed to be GMAC reports that denigrate any of our local businesses or our local processes or our community and their voices. And I think some of the comments in this report about SURF and Mr. May are out of order. I wish we had been able to see the presentation and the report before it was presented in a live and taped public forum so that we could make those kinds of comments and discussions. I think there's much more to be done on this. I moved in this community because I think it's extraordinarily beautiful and that should be preserved. But the processes that this council is currently using are out of order, inappropriate, and if it continues, I will resign from GMAC with a very public letter, both to the Board of Supervisors and to the ICO. We need to clean up our act if we're to have any credibility in this community at all.
Does that complete your remarks?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
Shall I speak now, Mr. Chairman?
You sure can.
Okay. I want to reset the clock here. I don't think I'm going to take my full 5 minutes, but I'll be on the clock as well. First, I want to address the concerns about this limitation and remind Sharon that she was the one who asked for these limitations during the bylaws debate because of her concern about Melissa taking over the meeting. She called me on a Sunday afternoon and spoke to me and said, what can you do something to control this? We have had other requests from council members for this meeting to try to keep this discussion to a reasonable length. Obviously, this is a topic where we could go on for many hours. We don't want to go back and forth. I think this has been a reasonable amount of time for each council member to express their views, to ask questions, and we gave extra time to Naphele and Frank, which I'm glad we did. Now, my thoughts. this is an evolving situation, as Frank has alluded to, and we have to be sensitive to that. I'm getting feedback from residents who are growing more alarmed at the prospect of retaining walls and departures from the town plan's eco-friendly goals. I have been in contact with several people in the community who reached out to me who want nothing. And as I remember, about 1 in 5 of the letters Frank received last year were from people saying, just pave the lanes we have and leave town. That's all we want. I respect that. I also respect people who want parking. But personally, I don't believe we need 2 lanes of parking through town, as was decided at the town hall. Was the town hall dysfunctional? Well, GMAC had voted unanimously to present a compromise solution. Frank called me the day before the meeting and asked me to debate Steve May, which I declined because I didn't think it was appropriate for a GMAC member to do that. I thought it would be a show. But I did offer to present the solution, and Frank gratefully accepted, and I was looking forward to that, to present GMAC's view to the community and let them decide. The bullying crowd at that meeting did not allow that presentation. I believe that compromise might have brought the community together. It was a reasonable solution to the situation. It respected an interim constraint plan for the surf market to guarantee their parking, and at the same time respected the town plan. So I'm not discounting the workshop at all. But today there are 3 letters in the paper. I didn't write them. These are other people who are expressing their feelings. We received several other letters at the council asking for a project that conforms more closely with the town plan. You can tell from the letters, these are not necessarily in line with my personal views. And I want to respect that everybody on this council has their own personal views, including me. More than 230 people have now signed petitions asking for a 3-lane roadway with landscaping, separated bike lanes, and ADA compliant sidewalks. I don't think that's an unreasonable goal. Many of the people I've spoken to have expressed the concerns about retaining walls and about the lack of landscaping especially. If we don't have that 4th lane for 2 lanes of parking and 2 lanes of roadway, then we don't need as much retaining walls. Frank's right, we still would need some because the town's built on a slope. There's going to be some retaining walls. Right now, the curb in front of the hotel is bigger than other places. Right now, there's a retaining wall at the Breakers. Not the Breakers, the
Seacliff.
Seacliff, thank you, Robert. So yes, we're going to have some things like that, but I appreciate Frank's sensitivity to the rural nature of our area. I've spoken with at least 4 property owners on the highway that still don't want parking in front of their businesses because it will hurt their curb appeal and because it raises safety risks. Frank asked me a few weeks ago what I thought about the red curb situation and where we really needed them. And I said, you know, Frank, I think the Public Safety Department of Caltrans should decide that. It's something that it's something that Caltrans really needs to look at and determine. But my understanding of state law is that there's supposed to be a 20 to 25 foot stretch before a driveway so that people can see oncoming traffic. If a motorhome is parked there, you can't see oncoming traffic. And the only way to find out if a car is coming is to put your hood out onto the roadway. So yes, I do believe personally that we should have 25-foot breaks before each driveway. And there's 18 of them. So that's a lot of turf, but I think that's necessary for safety if we're going to have a parking lane. I believe Frank and Naphele should go ahead and develop the proposal, but I have a motion I'd like to present tonight, and we'll see what the council says. If the council wants to offer feedback to Frank and Naphele as they go into this process, then we can do that tonight. So I think that concludes my remarks, Robert. I apologize to the council members whose feelings have been ruffled by this. It's not our intent to do that. It's our intent to have an orderly meeting and let everybody have a chance to speak without loud voices and crosstalk. Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion?
I wanted to say some things still.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, I've been on the GMAC a long time. Mary and I have been on the GMAC or with GMAC since the year 2003. And there's a thing that's gnawing with me over this past year, and that was how we all of a sudden just reversed course here. We took a huge detour from what had been evolving for so many years. And I remember all the years working with Naphele's predecessor, Phil Dow, and how, you know, in 2012, we came together as a Gualala Town Committee. For a whole year, we were discussing how are we going to go to the next step from a 64-foot right-of-way, which we were working with at the time, or a 64-foot proposed right-of-way, proposed streetscape. We were doing everything we could at that time to, and there was not always a full complement of council members at the time either. We were down to 4 at some points. And we worked hard at this from the year 12,000 till what happened last year. And we got a long ways. I mean, the Gualala Town Committee brought together a lot of people in town, brought together a lot of the property owners. We said, okay, let's reduce this as much as we can, this right of way, this streetscape plan. It was in deference to the surf center's issues that they have there, the surf center properties. Now, I don't know if I said this already, but I really value every one of these council members' expertise, not to mention Naphele and Frank's expertise on these matters. But somehow we went astray here this last year, and it was because of something that was a little bit devious, I thought. Okay, and it's been gnawing on me. And what I wanted to say was that, you know, somehow back when the surf market was built, and this was prior to my time moving to Gualala, it was probably 83 or somewhere in the early 80s. I moved here in the mid 80s, but around that time, somebody or somehow, maybe it was government, the infinite wisdom of the government at the time, fee ownership title of Highway 1 adjacent to surf center properties, it's somehow that ownership of Mr. Bauer or Bauer Limited Partnership of the highway in that section, it met the on-site parking requirements for the construction of a new 10,000 square foot building. And so here we are, stuck with that problem because we want to preserve, and we do want to preserve parking in front of the surf until something gets redeveloped there. But we don't want to go to the point where we are doing a streetscape plan and working around one property owner. This is called the Gualala Streetscape Plan. This is called the Gualala Downtown Enhancement Plan or project. It's not the, what do you want to call it, Bauer Limited Partnership Streetscape Plan. This is for everyone. And so we have to try not to make another wrong on this project. 2 wrongs don't make a right, as they say. So I'd like to see us stick to something that is minimalistic as can be in downtown, yet preserves all the elements of the town plan. And that's all I'll say for tonight, okay, on this matter.
Thank you, Robert. That concludes all the comment on this issue tonight. There were a couple of people who came in late, and I know Kathleen wanted to make a comment. But I think we're ready to move to a motion. Unless you want to extend this, Mr. Youngman.
I'd like to hear a motion on I assume the Alt 3 plan.
Yes, I drafted something tonight, so let's take a look at it. And then I will now unmute the other council members. Don, Melissa, Lloyd, George, Sherry, Mary, you've been uncharacteristically quiet. I'm going to unmute you too. Did I get everybody? I think I did. Okay. So here's my motion. We'll be looking for a second. I think we could have some brief conversation about this, but I don't think we should have a vociferous, loud debate. Everybody has a chance to vote on this and make a comment after they vote, or if they want to discuss the motion very briefly before that, I think that's fine too. But the hour is late and we have a lot on the agenda tonight. So here's my motion. Based on the findings of the GMAC Gualala Community Action Plan Committee and the latest reports from Caltrans of engineering issues encountered with the all-3 concept, I move that GMAC recommend that Caltrans and MCOG develop a 3-lane highway concept that fits within the previously allotted 60-foot right-of-way and incorporates elements of the Gualala Town Plan, including the separated bike lanes, landscaped ADA compliant sidewalks as they were described in all 2. And that we further recommend that MCOG and Caltrans incorporate an interim constrained option that will guarantee parking for the surf center stores, not just the surf market, but the surf center stores, for a fixed interim of time so that the center may complete its long planned parking and redevelopment project, hopefully before any part of the highway project is begun. Do we hear us? And I'd attach our committee findings on this. For clarity, this is the findings of our committee. It is not a finding of the GMAC as a whole, but I would say that it would be appropriate to attach those findings given that Robert and I have worked so intensely on this over the past year. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Did you say second the emotion?
The emotion.
Good song, good song.
Right.
Mr. Youngling, would anybody have a comment? Or go ahead,
Does
Rob.
anyone want to hear does anyone want to hear the motion again, first of all, or any comments? Is what,
I have one comment.
Melissa?
Was that option 2 the one with the meandering sidewalks?
It was. I didn't specify that in the motion. Whether it's a straight sidewalk. Okay, you want the
that's what I wanted to know, because the meandering sidewalks with the plantings I thought would be the most attractive, and that's what we want. Is we want to beautify and safetify.
Yeah, I hear you.
More beautiful.
I think Frank and Naphele hear you. I think Robert agrees with you. I kind of agree with you.
Okay.
Sharon.
Next comment, Sharon.
I'll moderate this, Robert.
Fine,
Sharon,
okay.
you want to go?
Please go ahead.
Yes, I would support the motion with the exception of it being based on the report that was presented earlier. That's a report of 2 people, not the report of the council. So you are inherently asking the council to approve that report, which I will not do because I think it's deeply flawed and inappropriate in its characterizations of some of the businesses and community responses and the town meeting that was held. Otherwise, if you take out that provision, I would support it.
George, do you have a comment?
Yes, I do, Tom. I really don't feel like it's our role to make a recommendation for conceptual design. I think it would be more appropriate if the council were to listen in on the upcoming webinar that Frank has planned. I would still like to see Caltrans propose what they think the design should be with with all the inputs that they've had, and certainly the history. And I think Frank is very capable of doing that. I think he's a capable individual. We've all found him to be, along with other good qualities. But I think our role is at this point is still to be in a listening mode. The council has in the past has had people bring their plans, their designs to the council, and we make recommendations. What we're doing right now seems to be kind of backwards. We're making recommendations, and then Caltrans is going to go off and get more input, and then come up with another design that's going to include the other inputs as well as ours. I think there's a couple of things wrong here. One, we're not acting as one body as a council at this, especially not this evening. I think the community action plan report kind of I got blindsided by it, quite frankly. I wasn't prepared for this kind of discussion this evening. But nevertheless, and that's not the most important thing. I think the important thing is that we try to stay in process. And I think the better process is for us to do a little more listening and participate in what Frank has planned and upcoming, and then let Frank come back to the council, with the plan that he's developed to address all these issues, and then we make recommendations as one council. I'm hearing too many personal opinions still. Meandering sidewalks, I'm sorry, Melissa, but that's a personal thing that you like. And I've heard one person talk about sidewalks in the whole last year, and that was the gentleman from Cypress Village, which I thought was, he gave a very good point of view and presentation, also in the working group. But I think our job is really to listen to Caltrans' proposal, make recommendations, not try to influence what the community's thoughts and opinions are. We can certainly talk as individuals. I try to be careful not to represent myself as a GMAC member when I state personal opinions. And I think also we have to be careful that we adhere to our role as an advisory council. I just feel like we're out of process here.
Okay, thanks, George. Robert, did you have any, or I'm sorry, Lloyd, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I'd like to say that I absolutely agree with George's point that we are getting ahead of ourselves here. Frank and Naphele and their crew are going to be putting together alternatives that they're going to be presenting to us and the rest of the community. And I think we should just let them do their jobs. When we try to get in there and make this this declaration that we must have this, I just don't think it's appropriate. I think we need to let Frank and his crew do their job, present alternatives, get input from the public. And I think this process that you created here is being rammed on the committee or on the council, and it's inappropriate, and we should just let Frank do his job.
Okay, I'll make a brief comment, then I'll give Robert the last word before we vote.
I'd like to make one comment.
You already did, Melissa. Okay, go ahead, make another one, but please make it brief.
A resolution of the Mendocino County Board of Supervisors establishing the Gualala Municipal Advisory Council. The highest priority of the council shall be those issues concerning the completion or updating of the general plan. So this is definitely our business, and it's our business to state what the town plan is and to insist on adherence to it.
Point taken.
I'm done.
Okay, thanks. I'll make my comment. And this goes back to George and Lloyd and Sharon because she's applauding them. We are not telling Caltrans what to do. I found that telling Caltrans what to do doesn't work anyway. But we are a council formed specifically to give recommendations. As George said, as Lloyd said, we are making a recommendation here. The word must does not appear in this motion. It's what the council thinks. And what we're asking them to do is to include this as the option that we think would work in this community. That's what we are here to do. We're here to tell people in government what the sense of our sense of the community is. We disagree with each other. And you know what? That's okay. I still like most of you at this point. And we'll continue to after this debate. We disagree on issues from time to time. So it goes. And then we vote on them and we move on. As far as individuals having opinions, guess what? Everybody does. Every politician in this country has opinions about the issues they vote on and consider every day. As far as the findings of this committee, This is the findings of this committee. And we are the ones who've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours in conversations and research over the past year and have come to these findings. These are the findings that we came to. We are not asking the council to accept every one of them. We recognize that some members of the council may disagree with one or more or 5 or 10 of them. But we are saying that, let me read the motion again.
Or the whole what?
I didn't hear a whole what. I don't know what you mean. I'd like to read the motion again, and please listen carefully, Melissa, one more time. Based on the findings of the Gualala Community Action Plan Committee, not GMAC, the committee, and the latest report from Caltrans of engineering issues encountered with all three concept, I move that Gualala Municipal Advisory Council recommend that Caltrans and MCOG develop a 3-lane concept. We're not telling them exactly what it is. We're asking them to develop one, a 3-lane concept that fits within the previously allotted 60-foot right-of-way, which we know works and is acceptable under the town plan. The 64 is not acceptable under the town plan, and incorporates elements of the Gualala town plan, including separated bike lanes, landscaped ADA compliant sidewalks as described in Alt 2. To Melissa's point, they were curvy. Wasn't my favorite, but you know, I hear people like them. We further recommend that MCOG and Caltrans incorporate an interim constraint plan option that will guarantee parking for the Surf Center stores for a fixed interim of time so that the center may complete its long-planned parking and redevelopment project. But there has to be an interim set in that option. And that project would be completed hopefully before the highway project is begun. Because one of the things we didn't talk about tonight that Naphele brought up at a meeting long ago is it costs a lot more. We may not get the same grants if we don't build continuous sidewalks all the way through town. I get that, and I understand it, and I'm leaving it to Frank and Naphele to work out that part of it because they're the experts, I'm not. So that's the motion, that's the intent of the motion. It's recorded for all to hear. I think it's very fair to everybody from the surf market to Mr. Bauer, and certainly to the people around town who are very, very concerned right now about the environmental impacts of this project. And I want to say again, I really appreciate the fact that Frank and Naphele have an open mind on this, and I ask them to please adhere to the town plan. So now I would like to be the first to vote on this. Oh, you know what? I'm still moderating here.
Who seconded?
It was Don who seconded.
Thank you.
Okay. I thought you wanted to say something, Mary, and I never would tell you not to talk.
No. I just needed to know who seconded, and that's all. Thank you.
Murphy and Hess. I would like to be the first to vote yes on this motion. And if Mr. Youngling wants to call the roll on the rest of the council.
Sure. Sherry?
No.
Don?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
George?
I'm going to vote no, and I'd like to have it read into the minutes, my reasons for voting no. We haven't heard what options Caltrans will propose. We shouldn't recommend what the options should be before they've even been developed. And I agree with what Lloyd said earlier. I think we need to step back and let Caltrans do their job. And if we want to later on pass a resolution based on Caltrans' presentation or proposal in the future, then I think that would be appropriate. I don't feel that this is appropriate at this time. So my vote is no.
Lloyd?
My vote is no for the same reasons that George has stated.
Tom, you already voted, correct?
Yes. Melissa?
Melissa
voted
has
aye.
voted.
I think you're the only one left.
And
I
I'm gonna-
voted yes.
Right. We got that, Melissa. And I'm going to have to vote yes also, knowing full well that we're going to get more presented to us from Caltrans, but I don't feel that the alt 3 proposal is what we're all looking for. So I think this is valuable input for Frank and for Naphele. And sure, we're not united, but we're never going to be united on everything. I mean, I think about all the tough decisions we've had to make already over the years that we've been together, and it's not easy. None of this is. So the presentation wasn't easy, but this is where all the findings we came up with, and I don't think that's why I'm voting the way I'm voting, because alt 3 isn't the ideal solution. We'll hopefully be all coming together a little bit more at the September meeting with Frank, and that's what I hope for.
So, and let me say just one more time, I understand that Frank and Naphele are going to be developing different variations on this. I'm not saying it has to be this one. I'm saying that I want to see what they have, but I'd like to see our recommendation taken into consideration as one of those options, because I think it really satisfies every stakeholder in the town.
Here, here.
So, was the tally 4-3, Mr. Youngling?
Yes, it was.
And I'd like to suggest it's 9 p.m. We've been meeting for 3 hours. Perhaps we want to take a 3-minute cool down break.
Okay.
Before we go on to the rest of the agenda.
At least a drink of water. Oh.
Yeah.
First, I'm going to take a 12-hour break. It's my bedtime.
Well, we have a lot on the agenda tonight, Melissa.
I understand that, but I'm going to be sleeping through it.
Okay, but you're going to stay on the call, right?
No, I'm going to go to sleep. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to say it's time to say goodnight, Dick.
What time? Let's set a limit here. Let's see how much more we can cover for another, what, half hour? 9:30, we call it quits. How's that?
How about this?
No.
Would we consider?
I'm telling you, I'm leaving the building.
Okay.
I need to go to sleep or I'm going to be sick tomorrow.
The rest of us, do we want to continue?
I don't feel like we should continue. I don't think people should leave the meeting like that, but
I'm just tired.
Okay, I will go ahead with that, but I think, given the length of this agenda, maybe we can put off a couple of these discussions till we have a full council here. For example, the discussion of the GMAC reports and the town plan. I think there are discussions that the full council should be involved in, and I don't feel comfortable with one of the council members being absent from that conversation.
Works for me. I just don't have to go now. Not an option.
Okay, so Melissa, Melissa, you are definitely history then. Is that what you're saying? You are history for tonight.
Yep, I'm saying good night, Dick.
Okay. Okay, so noted. George is raising his hand. Well, George?
Robert, would you entertain a motion to recess, and then we could actually set another date in accordance with our bylaws? We can recess and adjourn to a different date to pick up the balance of this meeting.
I'd be willing to entertain that. I see another hand waving. Who is that? Kathleen?
Everybody stay safe. Good night.
Okay. Melissa, would you, before you go? Oh, shoot.
Yes, it is Kathleen. Tom, it's my turn. All right.
Kathleen, hang on a second though, because we're just trying to get through the council members with their opinions on whether we should recess this meeting, but you'll get your say.
And my issue is our CDP, my personal home CDP is on here and I'd like to get it assigned.
Right. We should get that done. Okay.
I think we could.
That's real.
I think we could put a couple of items on hold and get through the rest of the agenda without I just don't think we should get into a town plan debate tonight without 7 members present. I don't think we should. Yeah, the GMAC reports and guides, we could discuss that, I suppose. The other committees, you know, there's not much to report there, I don't think. I think we can certainly do the Chasey CDP.
Thank you.
Okay. Again, back to George.
Robert, you know, I don't mean to offend anyone, but it's a matter of principle and also Robert's rules that I don't feel comfortable with any of us making recommendations on each other's CDPs. It's a potential conflict of interest. I think the Chaseys certainly, you know, are within their rights to file for an application. I think that should be left to the planning department to review. There are millions of reasons that, even though, you know, they're not material now, they could be in the future. I think it's in general terms, we should not be looking at each other's CDPs and voting on them. We should just let planning take care of it. It's no reflection on Lloyd or Kathleen. Please forgive me. It has nothing, actually has nothing to do with you personally or professionally. It's a matter of, yeah, it's a matter of propriety, I think, for us on the board, and how we do these things in the future.
You have a good point there, George, and I know Lloyd would have definitely recused himself from this, but you know, we're trying to see if we can get a little bit more of the agenda in, so we really shouldn't necessarily cherry pick items either.
Yeah, if we could mutually agree on this one, that just no comment would probably be the appropriate thing to do. You know, I don't think we should make a recommendation in one direction or the other.
You know what? I think we can talk about this when we get to that item. Why don't we knock off some other items on the agenda first?
Yeah, I was just trying to answer Kathleen's concern because she's waiting, you know, for us to do something there, and you know, out of respect for her and Lloyd, I just wanted to maybe offer the opportunity to deal with it that way.
I think our history has been that if you are conflicted, and I think this is policy under the county council's rules as well. If you are conflicted, you must recuse yourself. If you cannot make a fair decision on a matter. I can make a fair decision on these matters, and I think you can too, George. I don't see any problem with the council moving ahead on the Chasey CDP as long as Lloyd generously recuses himself.
Well, let me make one example for you, Tom.
You know, I don't think we should. I think this is out of order. I think we should.
We are out of order.
You know, you can state your opinion, but I can't state mine.
No, you just stated your opinion for about 5 minutes. I stated mine for about 1, and I think Mr. Youngling can decide whether we move on or what.
So leave it to Robert.
We're looking to jump ahead on our agenda, and I don't want to see us do that. We had a certain amount. We amended our agenda to a certain extent, and so we should go item for item and maybe cut off at a certain time. But yeah, sure, it would be nice to be able to assign the Chasey CDP, but we would be jumping out of order on the agenda. And I just, you know, I have something against that. It's not absolutely correct to do. We can recess, like George was alluding to, and we can meet again next Thursday. Can you all do that?
Well, you know, we have one item tonight. Una Wirkebau is here, and I'd like to have her speak to actually 2 items, because I think two of them concern her.
Okay, so we'll do, in other words, we'll do number B and C, letter B and C still, and then I mean, even.
I don't, you know, we could skip, we could adjourn and do some of these, but I'd like to see if we could do C.
Let's do B and C. Is everybody okay?
Oh, wait. I said C.
Jim.
And the release of the GMAC reports number F. I'd like to have Una around for that conversation. And I'd like to have her around for the housing and economic development. And she's here tonight. I don't want to request that she come back another night.
Well, let's do B and C then, if everybody is in favor of that. And then
B I don't care about. That's the PSPS. Do you want to do that? Oh, we should do that tonight because there is some urgency about the power outage coming up.
Let's hear the consensus. Can we at least agree to do B and C for now?
And F?
And then once we get to D, we'll decide further. Is that all right?
We could take some items out of order. that's perfectly permissible.
Are you sure, everyone?
I'll agree with anything if we just move ahead.
Yeah.
Let's get,
You know, let's
we have-
let's get a sense of the council here. We
we
did
have a
choose,
set, we have a set agenda item for a reason. And we should go move down the agenda as it's presented here. It's,
councils often go out of order on things.
yes, but then we're showing, I think, favoritism towards certain items, and I don't think we should do that.
I think we're showing some deference to a guest who's come to our meeting tonight who may
Right.
not be able to come to our next one.
Right.
And you know,
Let's ask the guest.
can we include those two items, please?
Let's
Which
ask
Be-
the guest.
This would be funny if it weren't so sad.
Yeah.
Which is what, which,
Tom,
let me,
you're cherry picking things.
let me speak, please. I am still the chair. At one point here earlier, when it got pretty heated and out of control, I was just about to slam this gavel and adjourn the meeting, but I don't want to do that. I want to get through all this stuff if we can, but let's go down the list and we'll see where we end up after B and C. At least Una gets something in on her Move 2030 update. And then these are virtual meetings. I don't see why anybody can't join a meeting again in another week or two, whatever we decide. Recess and we reconvene in another week or two. Can we at least be unified and agree on that much for the time being?
Well, let's just keep going on the agenda.
Okay. Everybody okay with that?
I'm not saying that we should adjourn then. I think we should just go through the rest of the agenda.
So let's hear from the PSPS and Emergency Preparations Ad Hoc Committee, please. That would be Donald Hess, Sherry Meyer, and George Probinger.
Yeah, I'll just start and be very quick. We had our last meeting on June 23rd. Since then, we've been working on edits and trying to, I call it semi-finalize the document, the guide. It's, I think all the council members have received a copy of it for comment, and I believe it's also been posted on our website, and it looks like it's ready to go. And again, our purpose is to have a work in progress that will be periodically updated, maybe added to. But with the situation at hand with wildfires in California, we felt that we needed to get this done and have it available to the public. So with that, Sharon, if you have something you want to say, or Don, go ahead, step in.
My only comment, George, is that I will give you my notes because I hereby resign from GMAC.
Wow. Over our little bit of arguing. Oh boy. Interesting. Okay.
Okay. To notwithstanding this happened, which is unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Us regarding
I'll
this
get to you, Kathleen. Don't worry.
disaster preparedness document, I do think we need to publish it and make it available right now. I mean, we're entering fire season.
Right.
It may not be perfect, but I think it's a pretty good start. Greg Warner liked it. Other people have liked it, and you have all had a chance to look at it and comment on it. And I think if you're pretty much, if there's nothing that you oppose about it in particular, then I think we should just say, okay, this is good enough for a start. Let's publish it. Let's make it available. We can modify it in time, of course. We can add items, recommendations, whatever, but let's get this thing printed and available.
I saw that Lloyd put it on the website, and I went through it pretty thoroughly, and I think it's great that we got it on the website. Kathleen's been raising her hand. You want to talk to this item here, Kathleen?
No, I want to make a comment on Sharon's sudden resignation, because in sitting here and through the 3.5 hours and listening to all of you, and I respect the volunteer time that it takes, this was a very incredibly embarrassing phenomenon. When you all look at it recorded, if you take the time to do that, I think you will find that you're functionally out of step. You didn't care for what Sharon had to say. The people that took the time, the non-GMAC members that took the time to be on the call tonight, that wanted to say something about the town plan, etc., that's all fine. But Sharon had something to say, and you never let her really say it all. And that was, it could have cost another 3 or 4 minutes. You didn't like it, so you did exactly what the bullying at the October 2019 meeting did. You bullied her. I would have resigned too. And isn't that a shame? Because she's a really thoughtful person. And our community has now been disadvantaged by that very thoughtful person leaving. So keep in mind, take a good look. I would challenge everybody to calm down and watch this recording. And don't do it for, I agree with that person, so it's a good thing they got to talk, and I don't agree with that person, so it's a good thing that they muted them. This is sickening. This one person having control of mute, non-mute, etc. And then really isolating someone who obviously had a different opinion and stifling her voice. And I'm embarrassed for GMAC tonight. And I'd like that to go on record.
It just did. And I think I get to respond to that, Mr. Youngling.
Okay, go ahead.
Sharon was agreed to the rules ahead of time, was given time to speak, wanted to change the rules in the middle of her presentation. We stopped her presentation, or she stopped her presentation, and then we gave her more time to speak anyway, even though it wasn't in the rules. She got full time, more than full time, to address the concerns. And I disagree with that conclusion. And I don't want to get into a debate about this, but I do get a chance to respond to Kathleen's assertion, which is not on the agenda. We do have time to go on to other items here.
I appreciate everybody's opinions, and thank you, Kathleen, for your opinion as an outsider, so to say, even though you're affiliated with one of our council members. But yeah, we got to do a better job somehow. And these are just it reminds me of the cell tower stuff. It is very intense subject matter. And so I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary. You watch our government work and it's similar. So
yes, but you know what, Robert? Don't use that as a model that you want to do.
I shouldn't.
You're having a heart attack right now.
Well, I would.
It's my turn. It's my turn. Tom, it's my turn. If you mute me, I'll have the letter to the IC.
Muting you?
No, but effectively you're trying to do that. And I think that that's what you have to be really careful for. You know, people are taking their volunteer time to say something. Let them say something. I'm not asking you to talk for 45 minutes, nor was Sharon. She wanted to talk for 3 or 4 minutes.
She spoke for 5.
Yes, but Tom, let's add up all the time in the 3 hours and 19 minutes you spoke.
Let's stop.
Okay, I resign.
Let's move on. Okay, Mary, did you have something to say? Mary.
Wanted to point out that there was no agreement, nor vote, nor second on any of the rules that have come down. There was no agreement, no voice agreement, nor any motion, second, or vote on same. That's all I needed to say.
I anticipated a contentious meeting, and I asked to have some kind of guidelines or rules in play, and everybody seemed to be okay with it. We didn't have an official vote, no, but I mean, look at our agenda items. We've got the ad hoc committee, the GCAP ad hoc committee, which is a contentious item, and then we had the town plan, Mary. I mean, you don't tell me those aren't big contentious items, so I wanted to casually or somehow get some kind of feedback from the council members without an official motion. Hey, are you okay with these? Let's try to make our meetings move a little quicker. And here we are again in a 4-hour meeting practically. And let's limit our time. And I thought everybody was kind of on board. So,
Sounded like it to me.
okay, Don.
Yeah, I just want to mention that if I'm not mistaken, the ability for the chairperson to limit a debate on potentially contentious issues that can go on and on and on, it's in our bylaws now. So I don't think we have to have any kind of a vote about something like that. I think it's that's up to the chairperson, you know, and he or she can make that decision. And to me, this is normal in order to sort of, especially with a Zoom meeting, these Zoom meetings can run off the rails unless there's some degree of control. And I've been in other meetings that have gone off the rails. So we know it can happen. And this, I think, is why other governmental bodies limit their debates as well.
It was a courtesy request, basically, and you know how we get when we're actually in the community center. We try to limit input from ourselves as well as the audience. So here we are experiencing the other side of Zoom, like you just said, Don, where we're getting a little bit off the rails, and we were just trying to get some kind of a courtesy and respect from everybody beforehand that, okay, try to limit your comments. And here we're going way outside the borders. George.
Robert, the regulation of time and discussion in public meetings is generally the function of the chair.
Right.
And I think you should be doing that.
I tried, George. I tried.
I think you kind of lost control of the meeting. Obviously, it got out of control, but that's just my suggestion is, you know, take that role. You know, having it divided between two people doesn't help. I think you need to take that role and regulate people's time. You have a sense of how much time people are going to need. You know, it's a judgment call. One person is making that judgment. It shouldn't be passed back and forth.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Okay. Enough on that. Do we move on here? That's all from the PSPS Emergency Preparations Ad Hoc Committee. Hey,
Yep,
I did
that's all we
notice,
have.
can I say one thing? I did notice, I didn't notice that one number in there that I thought was a good request of mine back at last month's meeting. And that was to put the telephone number of the GCSD in there. What if we have an emergency where we've got a bunch of overflowing sewer tanks here in town and they need to take their generator or be called or something and go around to different residences and commercial establishments and use their generator to take care of sewage overflows. I thought it would be a good idea to put that number in that manual that you guys have so nicely prepared.
So that number did not get in there?
No, I didn't see it in there.
I didn't see the email.
Well, it was, I spoke about it, I guess, and when we commented on the good product last month. So
I must have missed it somehow.
There was North Gualala Water Company I saw. There was PG&E, and I thought you were going to add the GCSD. And it wasn't in there.
Listen, I think, you know, Don's point is very good. We need to get this thing out before the PSPS hits. I am prepared to move that we approve the release for now with the condition that the committee.
It's already released. It's already released on the website.
The draft is that we formally release the report.
Okay.
With the condition that the committee continues to work on updating it. It's supposed to be a continually updated plan. There are a lot of things missing in this plan. I sent George and I think everybody in the committee about 2.5, 3 pages of comments. For example, KCBS isn't listed as a radio station when it's an all news station in the Bay Area. There's a bunch of things in there that go beyond let's have a flashlight and batteries. You know, storing documents in the cloud is a fundamental thing that people should be doing. So,
that's in there.
Okay, good. Well,
okay,
I didn't notice that in this draft, but I move that we go ahead and release this with the condition that it be continually updated through the fire season.
I was just adding that one comment. Okay. Well, then let's move on. So we get
second.
Are we okay? Do we need a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay. Don, are you in favor? Yay or nay? Releasing it. Okay. Melissa, George.
Aye.
Lloyd. Lloyd, is he hearing us?
He's muted.
He's muted.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Tom
Aye.
and Robert? Aye. Okay. So we'll move on to the next item, Housing and Economic Development Standing Committee. Mr. Murphy and Ms. Finley.
Thank you. I'm going to share. Okay.
Can I make one last comment on our disaster? I just would like to work with Lloyd in terms of the right placement on our website. Because right now it's just under, August meeting, something like that. I believe there's a resources section on the website. Is that true? If so,
Yes.
maybe put it there, or at least highlight it in one manner or another, so that people pick up on it a little quicker.
Okay, good.
I'll work with George on that, or Lloyd. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go through this pretty quickly because I want to get to Una. We have some PPE. The state OES sent the county some masks and sanitizers. We have about, I've distributed about 1,100 masks and 20 large bottles of sanitizers, about half the supply we have. There's some available at Robert's office through the Chamber of Commerce, and I would be willing to deliver it to any businesses in the Gualala Anchor Bay area. I've already put this up on the Gualala Marketplace and gotten some responses there, as well as from the HED distribution list. I think we could put off the discussion on homeless and transients, but I did want Una here tonight to talk about Move 2030 and an upcoming workshop she has. I think it's coming next week, and speak a little bit about Gualala and Move 2030. Una, obviously we're a little pressed for time, but I really appreciate your sticking around and would love to have you comment.
Okay, Una, you got the floor.
Hi.
Hi again.
So, hello again. So for those of you who've not met me, Move 2030 stands for Mendocino Opportunities for a Vibrant Economy. And our county, believe it or not, doesn't have an economic development or resiliency plan. And that's something that's concerning. And so actually it was a few years ago after the fires, there was an EDA grant that was applied and approved to put together a plan for how we would move forward with resiliency through different crises. And ironically enough, Move 2030 officially began right around February, March, which is when we were hit with another crisis. So I have been gathering a lot of data, and I know that you have all been through a very contentious evening. You have a lot of hot topics right now, but I want you all to reflect and really pat yourselves on the back, because I have sat in countless MAC meetings for the past few months all over the county. And I can tell you that Gualala is so much farther ahead than any other community out there. And I think that you really should be proud of yourselves because of the hard work that you've done and because of how you run your organization. You've done an amazing job, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. I applaud you. So don't be too hard on yourself. There are always going to be bumps in the road, and you are attempting to put in place something you've been working on for a really long time to better your community. And I really appreciate that, because in the bigger picture, that's what we need everyone in our county to be doing. So in the chat bar, if I'm allowed, I was going to put, or maybe I'll have Tom do it. I want my email address down here, which is really simple. It's Una, U-N-A, at move2030.org. And I'm asking you to email me if you are interested in attending a meeting that we are having on Monday. So for the past few months, I, as well as EDFC, have been having individual conversations with a number of entities to gather data. We've also brought in entities from external sources to do data collection, things like clustering reports and how COVID has affected us and how we need to move forward. And this information is going to be presented on Monday. As you all may know, Mendocino County has some amazing attributes, but we also have quite a few challenges. And a lot of these challenges have been discussed over and over and over again for years without any action items put in place. And that's what Move 2030 is all about. We're not here to talk about our challenges any longer. We're here to come up with a plan to resolve these issues. And we know we're not going to be able to resolve all of them. And so this meeting on Monday is more of a 30,000-foot look at our county and the challenges that are in front of us and how we can overcome them. So individually, for your region of the county, it's fantastic what you've done, the work that you've already done in place on how you would like to move forward with accomplishments that will enhance your community. And I'm having all the other communities within the region do the same thing. But this particular meeting is going to actually start off with some success stories of other locations in California that have put together economic development plans and how they have affected their community. You're also going to hear from Beacon Enterprise, which is an entity that's done economic data gathering and will reflect on what's happening here in Mendocino County. And then we're also going to be asking you to pick a breakout group to put these action items in place. So it's a 2-hour meeting on Monday. You're going to email me and I'll send you the registration link to attend that meeting. The more people that are on that meeting, the better. The more representation you can have from the South Coast would be fantastic. But know that it's not a meeting to discuss or to say we need housing. We know we need housing. It's not a meeting to discuss broadband. We know we need broadband. We're going to really deep dive into how we can fix these challenges. And so these breakout groups will be set specifically for those. So even though Monday's meeting is only going to be 2 hours long, it's going to ask you to sign on to a breakout group of your choice that would have 3 more meetings over the next 2 months to actually put together plans on paper that we can move forward with. Not all plans are going to actually be able to happen. As you all know, there's only so many hours in a day, but we're going to, from these meetings, pick the top ones that we can accomplish and start getting some real movement in our county so that people feel confident that change can happen and that we're working towards a common goal, all of us together. So there's a lot more happening with Move 2030, and there's a lot more that I would love to tell you guys. However, the night is long and you have more things to discuss. I want you to know that you can reach out to me at any time. And again, I really want you to know that as a community and as people that are really passionate about a region that you live in, you guys are doing an amazing job. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Una. Before we move on from the committee, I want to ask Una one other thing. This came up at our last council meeting, Una, and I want the council to hear this. Would you please explain how it came to be that I wrote a summary of the HED committee's activities for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, there is a lot of data to collect. And one of the concepts that I really wanted to have was each of these unincorporated areas of the county that are highly populated, I needed a plan from them. I needed to know from you basically a SWOT analysis. What's good? What's bad? What have you tried? What's not happening? And in those interviews, it came out that you have already been discussing these items. You were already so far ahead of the curve. So when I found that out, I approached Tom and I said, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. You have already been talking about all these things that I need in a short couple page summary, because I need that from all of the different communities. And if you're that far along, maybe you can help me show other communities what it is I'm looking for. And Tom really went above and beyond, because I literally asked him to do this in less than 48 hours because I had a meeting with Hopland. And I really felt that by showing them what another community could do, they would be able to accomplish the same. And that's why you guys are kind of the poster child for what a community can do to reflect what their needs are in a greater scope. And Tom has been great about coming to other meetings with me and explaining the process of what you guys have done to meet together. And again, I give you kudos because you are so far ahead of the curve than any of our other populations. And I'm very appreciative.
Okay.
Thank you, Una.
Good to hear you could use that information. What was your email address, Una?
It's Una, U-N-A,
Yeah.
at move2030.org.
.org. Okay.
And I believe it is in the chat bar. It is.
Yes.
Where do I go for that? Chat?
Down where it says chat.
Oh, okay. Okay. I see.
There's a message from me from earlier too. Okay. Now the housing issue, I just want to say that issue we're here. Melissa is agreed to take on more of the housing element of my committee, and we'll be looking into the housing and homeless issues. We were already starting to look into that, but I just wanted to say that she and I had a conversation about this, and it makes sense for her to focus on the areas that she's most interested in, and I focus more on the economic development. We'll both be, of course, still working on each other's matters as well. But I'm very proud of Melissa for stepping up to the bat about that. And I don't think I have anything else for this committee. There is the discussion down here about the release of GMAC reports and guides. And I'll just ask Una one more thing. Did I at any time say that that was approved by the full GMAC? That
No.
summary that I wrote for you quickly?
No, absolutely not. You said that they were all discussion points that you had gone through with over time, but that it was not an approved final submittal. We were just going to use it as guidance for other communities. And quite frankly, it is so stellar that the folks that have seen it have been very impressed.
All right, thanks very much. I appreciate that clarification. And I don't think, honestly, unless somebody else wants Una to stay around, I think we can let her go for the evening.
Thanks, I'm being dismissed.
Okay, thank you, Una.
I really appreciate your coming here tonight, Una, and speaking to all the issues that you spoke to. Your expertise is very much appreciated by this council.
It was my pleasure. And I look forward to seeing many of you on Monday.
I'll be there for sure.
Thank you.
So that was the Move 2030 update. Sherry had asked me to put the next item on the agenda. Apparently we put it under the housing section because it's lack of housing, basically. We've got homeless people in town. We've got some transients that were hanging out, I guess, at properties in town. And so she made the request of me to put that on the agenda because she had been receiving a lot of calls from, I guess, business owners. So yeah, we're faced with some of those issues a little bit more than we have been in the past, whether that's just seasonal or whether it's due to the COVID or what. I'm not totally positive, but if anybody wants to talk about this, even though I was going to kind of let Sherry lead the discussion on this, but that was where we were coming from. Don.
Yeah, I move that we defer discussion of this issue until our next meeting.
Okay. And I will note that the committee.
Second. Do we have a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
Further discussion before we vote?
Yeah, I'll just note that Melissa and I are already working on this on the committee level, and we'll bring something back to the council at the next meeting.
Okay. Let's vote on that. Don?
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Lloyd,
Aye.
and Robert. Aye. Okay, so we'll defer, we'll delay that. What time is it getting to be? Do you want to continue with the agenda now? We said we'd revisit.
It's 9:40. I
Um,
think we're close.
You want to continue then?
Yeah, let's go through.
But I just recall that I said we'd look at where we're at when we get to D. Okay. I can't say I have anything, Don, on our little committee here, the Public Electric Vehicles Charging Station report, but you probably do. I think you've been active at it.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
mean, again, I could talk to some length on this in terms of, what has happened, but again, I think this can be deferred until next month.
Okay, sounds
I-
good.
That we defer any discussion of this until the next meeting.
Okay. Then let's go on to Telecommunications Committee.
The only thing I had on this was I was just going to report we had 65 views of our last meeting, 66% of them in the first week, and the average viewing time was just over 14 minutes, which is a little bit more than the prior month. And that our June meeting views went up to 105 from 99, so not a big increase there. Almost all the viewing of our meetings is in the first few minutes, and then people drop off. The big draw in our last meeting was the sewer district discussion, and after that, nothing got more than a few percent of viewers. So that's all I had for that. Don, did you have anything?
No, I don't.
Great.
Okay, moving right along. Then we had on the agenda, we had next was the discussion, release of GMAC reports, guides, etc., which we briefly touched upon, Tom. But does anybody else have any input on that? Not at the moment. You want to go on to the next thing then?
Sure.
Discussion of the Gualala Town Plan. That's going to be a lengthy discussion.
Well, does people want to take that up tonight, or does anybody have anything to say? I mean, let's ask that.
Okay, it sounds like Don might. Go ahead, Don.
Once again, I move that we defer discussion of this issue until the next meeting.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Second to George. Okay, let's vote on that then. Or any other discussion on that. I might have some, when we discuss it again, I'll have some input on it. So I'll defer also, but George.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Don.
Aye.
Lloyd.
Aye.
Robert. Aye. So that's deferred. Then we had the items that we amended. I asked to have the Caltrans OF 440 project on the agenda, and I've been dealing with 3 different people on that now over a short period of time at Caltrans, and I want to keep the community alerted on what's going on with the paving project. So I last talked with a gentleman, and I hope you guys didn't mind, or I mean, I got scolded once before for just trying to get an update, but I went ahead and I talked to the Caltrans area construction engineer, the new one, and he said the parking project would be starting as soon as maybe the 10th of August or the Monday thereafter.
Wow.
Granite Construction is the contractor for the paving project, which excludes the Gualala downtown enhancement area. And they will be going from the Gualala Bridge up beyond, where do I know, Point Arena somewhere, okay? The repaving of Highway 1. So at present, he said Granite Construction is finishing up a project on Highway 20 east of Fort Bragg, and then we'll then be relocating down to the Gualala area. So I asked them, could you maybe give us a heads up or at least contact the ICO? And so I suggested a press release so that people are aware of this. It's going to be a major construction project, I think, with flaggers and with equipment and delays on Highway 1. So that was what I did on that thing, on that project, okay? We're all aware, we've been talking about it a long time now that they were going to be paving. So including the area there south of the view that we were also concerned about. So that was my update on that. Any questions? Okay, then we added the water moratorium item. And I don't really give you the status of the water moratorium because it's ongoing, but I at least give us all a status of what the river's doing at the USGS gauge. That's the United States Geological Survey gauge that measures the flow of the river back on the North Fork, okay? And so I took a look at the USGS today, and we are, let me see, last month was 5.63 cubic feet per second were measured past the gauge, and today it was 4.09 cubic feet per second. So that today's reading is another historically low reading for this early in the summer season. And I think we all need to be aware that North Walla Water Company is going to be having to instigate mandatory water restrictions here fairly shortly before once it goes below the 4 cubic feet per second. And that's my input on that. Okay, we need to know that. Maybe people go to the North Walla Water Company website and get more information there. But you should be aware, or I at least am aware, that we need to conserve. I mean, I don't know how low the river is going to get, but this is historically low. That was it on that. So where are we at? Administrative Secretary Mulbert's report. We might just make it through this meeting.
Yeah, I guess we might. I worked 23.15 hours last month. Materials were $4.46 for a total of $351.76. I have sent my report to Mr. Chasey.
Okay. Got it.
And I was paid for last month. And this is lower than last month.
Right.
This is less work than I did last month. I think last month was 25 hours and something.
Okay.
So, Lloyd,
you,
your report, Chasey's report, Treasurer's report.
Well, unfortunately, my report is that I'm also resigning right now because I think that the way that this council has been managed over the last few months is inappropriate. I think, Robert, you've given up control to Tom, and Tom's set the agenda, manipulated the meeting and the ability of other people to speak so he can have his own agenda. And I don't care to participate in that. I think we're here to serve the community, and I think we're serving Tom Murphy's interest right now, and I don't think that's appropriate. So I'm resigning as soon as I send Mary's invoice into the county so that she can get paid right away. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay, Lloyd. That's interesting. Vice Chairman Murphy's report. Tom, where did he go?
I'm here.
Okay.
I have deep regrets that both Sharon and Lloyd have left the council. As Robert said, we knew this was going to be a contentious meeting on a number of levels. We tried to set some ground rules to keep the meeting going along. The ground rules were things that Sharon had asked me to do back in the bylaws days, to come up with some sort of mechanism that people would be time restricted. The rules we followed for this hearing are very much like what the supervisors do in every meeting. They have a presentation by staff, a presentation by the subject matter expert, and then take public comment, and then have short discussions among the supervisors. I've watched Chairman Jardy cut those short and say, okay, let's move on. I think this was a very good faith effort on our part to have a fair and open discussion, and everybody got more than 5 minutes tonight to talk. As far as the amount of time I took, that was because I was moderating the session. It's not easy juggling all this stuff at this end. I'm not griping about it. I'm glad we got through that issue, and I'm glad it stayed as calm as it was. I did get a thank you for trying to help keep things calm from somebody who was at the meeting tonight, and I appreciate that. But it's very sad to me to see people get emotional and upset and quit in a huff. I'm not a quitter. I know that people disagree with each other. I have the utmost respect for Robert's work as chairman, and I have no way tried to usurp his power. I think Robert has the experience and the institutional knowledge. I said this earlier this year when he asked whether he should continue as chairman. I would be lost if Robert left this council. He's the chairman. He has the background. He runs the meetings. And I am here to facilitate his efforts as defined in the bylaws. I assist in the preparation of the agenda, but I don't control the agenda. Robert, I always say, whatever you want to do on that. On the rules for tonight's meeting, it was, he and I discussed the options, and I said, it's totally up to you as chairman. I agree with Don's comments earlier that other bodies, the chairman makes these rules and just decides on the fly. That's the way it is. And I'm sorry that we just can't talk all night long, but look, it's 9:52. We started this meeting at 6. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, a lot. And I'm very impressed with the council for getting through it, as painful as this session has been. So I want to thank those of you who stuck around. I hope nobody else leaves the GMAC. I do enjoy working with everybody. And I guess that's all I have to report tonight.
Okay. I appreciate you pointing out, stating your point of view there on that, Tom. I said it earlier. I said, I can't believe the expertise that we have on this council and all the viewpoints that we have. And Tom, how you have stepped in the role of vice president or vice chair, and you have an over exuberance almost. You have so many skills. You have your journalistic skills, and I really have welcomed that in a way. I defer to you a lot. I do like to have my chairmanship role and be able to, but I'm not a really strong chairman in that I really slam down my foot or the gavel or anything like that, but I want to hear everybody's viewpoints. So I'm saddened too that 2 council members felt that they had to resign tonight. We had some really very tough subject matter, and I mean, it caught us a little blindsided last year the way things went, and this was just another way of approaching a very tough subject matter, and it wasn't all that out of line. I did not think at all, and I think, like I said earlier, also that Frank and Naphele are going to take those comments that we made tonight, and it'll be good for the final project someday. So anyway, I wanted to just say some words on Tom's behalf, okay? That I do very much appreciate what he does for our council, as I do for George, as I do for Don, and I did for Sherry and Lloyd. But it's just a shame. I mean, here we're going to be looking for council members again, and here it was the first time in many years we had a full council. Charlie Ivor, he had to resign because he had other things going on. He has a huge role with Friends of the Gualala River. I know Lloyd probably has a huge role now too, helping his wife with the whole Mill Bend thing. Maybe Sherry has something else going on too, and she just said was fed up with the way this wasn't totally professionally run. I'm sorry for that, but I thought we had a little understanding beforehand, and that we would limit our speaking amount of time so that we could go home maybe 3 hours after this meeting. But here we are, 4 hours, and it wears on you. So let's keep on working together, I hope, and try to get through our subject matter maybe quicker, or I'll put my foot down a little harder, and I'll use the gavel even on these virtual meetings, and we'll try to limit George to 3 minutes to 5 minutes max, but we were getting out of hand again today because nobody was adhering to the guidelines we set to begin with. And that's it for me. And that was pretty much my chairman's report too. So who is going to walk the Chasey CDP?
I think I better beg off that one.
George did the last one. Don, you and I want to do it maybe?
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay with you all?
Well,
Yeah.
Robert, I'd like to just reiterate what I said before, but maybe I should say it differently. There are potential situations that can arise that can have the appearance of conflict of interest. And the issue of conflict of interest is not just the conflict, but it's also the appearance of that.
Right.
We've tried to do a lot of things in recent months to improve our effectiveness and our as well as our credibility. And I think if we engage in those things, we just set ourselves up. There's nothing wrong with letting the planning department do their job and just say we're not going to comment on this time. We're not, and I think we should agree amongst ourselves that we don't review and comment on each other's CDPs.
Oh yeah.
If somebody gives a negative recommendation, for example, and there's always the potential. Maybe it's not you or me or the people are even on this council even now, but there could be retribution in the past, in the future, if somebody feels that they were dealt with unfairly or that sort of thing. Conversely,
right,
somebody could look at that and say, well, you guys won't recommend approval of my CDP, some member in the community, but you'll recommend each other's. It has that appearance of conflict of interest. And I'll be honest with you, I just don't feel like I'm being heard here.
So you're speaking specific to this CDP. I wouldn't understand that until you got into it a little ways.
Well, you're talking about a council member that has a CDP.
Right.
And I said earlier, I don't think it's a good idea that we should be reviewing and commenting on each other's CDPs. Okay. If you have one that you submit, if I have a negative recommendation,
right.
Now I submit one in the future, and you come back and give a negative recommendation, who's to say it isn't retaliation? If it's somebody in the community who has a CDP that gets a negative recommendation, and they see that, well, hey, you've got these council members, they recommend each other's CDPs, but look what they did to me.
Okay, I'm going to recommend, or I'm going to make a motion. I don't usually do that, but I'm going to make a motion that we all recuse ourselves from Chasey. I'm calling him an ex-council member, Chasey's CDP.
Well, I think it's more than just recusing. We don't take action.
And don't take action.
I don't feel comfortable going out to Lloyd's place and looking at where he wants to put a deck in and making comments about that. And then I can say, well, I can recuse myself and not vote. But wait a minute, you went out, I went out and did the review. My recommendation is no action whatsoever.
Okay.
In other words, we leave it to the planning department to look to whatever compliance issues there are with respect to building a deck.
And we explained to them our reasoning. Okay, Tom, what do you feel on that?
I spoke to the county council last week because of the streetscape thing. And I asked him, I said, look, I feel strongly about this issue. And, is it okay for me to express myself in the community and still discuss it at the meeting? And he reminded me of what he said last fall. And I think this applies to all of us. If you come to a meeting and you can put your feelings aside and keep an open mind and consider different options, then it's okay. And I feel like I can do that on streetscape or any other issue. As a journalist, every journalist in the country has an opinion on pick an issue, abortion. They're for it, they're against it, they're for choice, they're against choice. But they can all put that aside and write about it. If you cannot put that aside, you should recuse yourself from the issue. George, if you felt uncomfortable going to the Chaseys and inspecting their deck, you should recuse yourself. And given tonight's resignation, I think I'd have to recuse myself because of Lloyd's comments. But I think, you know, Don and Robert certainly could go ahead and do that and still make a fair determination. Would there be recriminations? Well, you know, that's something we have to live with on GMAC. You know, I don't have any problems with that. I think that we could go ahead and consider each other's CDPs when they come up. It's such a rare thing. And if people can't do that, then they should recuse themselves. I do hear you, George. I understand what you're saying. And I am listening to you. But I wanted to add that the other thing, by the way, that the county council mentioned is that because we're not a deciding body, because we are a recommending body, an advisory group, that's a different status. If we were the ones making a decision on streetscape, that would be a different thing than advising, say, Caltrans of the county on what we think the community wants on streetscape. And he pointed out, we are here specifically because we want to express, we're expected to express our opinions. Now, on the CDP thing, I would oppose a general rule like that. And if Robert and Don feel capable of going out to the Chaseys and looking at their project, then I think they should go ahead. And besides, it's moot now because Lloyd's not even on the council anymore.
I would have had no problem going out to his CDP one way or the other, George, to be honest with you. I would look at it neutrally as I do everything and give my findings. Don?
Yeah. Again, also, I don't think I'm going to have a problem. I mean, you know, it's unfortunate, you know, what happened tonight, certainly, but that's not going to impact my evaluation of his CDP. Why? I mean, I just don't see it. So I'm comfortable evaluating the CDP.
But on the other hand, I also understand George's point of view. I mean, if it's too, I mean, I like all of you. I always will, but I think I will anyway. But it could come to a situation where there is a retribution or where there is that kind of thing that George was alluding to, and that wouldn't be a good thing, of course. But I don't think we're like that. Our human nature isn't like that, and especially not, you know, when it comes to something as important as a coastal development permit, and it's, I don't have any problem with it. So will we do it? Will we go ahead and do it? Are you all okay with it? Do we have to vote on this, or do we? What are we gonna do? See,
we do still have a quorum if you want to vote, but I think you can go ahead and do it.
You have any problem with us walking it, George?
I've given you guys my opinion, and
right.
You know, with a lot of corporate experience and having read a lot of policies and procedures, you know, the one thing in language that often it eludes people is the issue of appearance of conflict of interest.
Right.
And you know, if we're serving the Board of Supervisors, we're also serving the community. Sometimes those perceptions are important too. And you know, we have good intentions. You know, my father taught me at a young age that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know, you can be, you know, a person with the best intentions of the world, but you know, if you don't exercise judgment, sometimes that'll bite you in the butt. You know, it happens. And frankly, I just think that it sets up a potential precedent that could not only just bring criticism, but it could impact the perception of people in the community who they need to trust this council. Right, you know, I have said all along, we make recommendations we don't approve, but the people in the community view us as part of that approval process. You know, we may individually have nothing to gain making those recommendations, but the people on the other side of that do. You know, they rely on that, and if they're relying on that, they also rely on us to act prudently in these kinds of situations. I just don't feel like it's sufficient to say, well, my intentions are good, so therefore it shouldn't be a problem. A lot of people have been bitten by that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
well,
all I really want to say. I mean,
we
you guys, use your own judgment, whatever you want to do. That, it's your judgment. And I respect that. But I think I feel like, my opinion. I'm offering it in an effort to help, not to hinder.
May I suggest we ask Kathleen what she thinks? She's still here.
Okay. Kathleen?
Oops. Here I am. I think actually, George brings up a very good point. That I think in light of a very nasty GMAC meeting tonight, it could be perceived as having a problem. So the thing is that in the whole deal on the CDP, the Chasey family is getting a major education on CDP world. The GMAC comments are one of 20, and we've received a whole bunch of comments. It's a friggin' deck with a pizza oven on it. Most of them say no comment. So that is a option GMAC has, is just say no comment and then you're done. And say that for every council member CDP that comes up, because our CDP went out to, I think, 30 different organizations around Mendocino County. The ones that are going to have the biggest deal about will be the planning department
And neighbors.
and our neighbors. Yeah. And so I think you could avoid it by doing what you need to do and write no comment. You asked my opinion. There it is.
We're already. Okay. Don and I will walk it, and we'll handle the CDP 2020-0017 Chasey at our next regularly scheduled monthly GMAC meeting. Okay?
And early in the meeting, because I can probably only take one more of these.
The council will handle it at the next meeting.
I hear you, Kathleen.
Well, I'm doing a really good job for Millbend and for Gualala. So do me a favor and Mary, put it early in the meeting, because
we will handle it at our next meeting. Okay.
Kathleen, you are doing a great job for Millbend in the community.
You are, and we're
And
good.
even though I hated this tonight, my daughter got engaged, and so I don't care what you all do. We got good news in our family on everything else. So I'm sorry though, that things don't good.
All CDPs are right after the legal report, the law enforcement report, every one, because it is the main thing that GMAC does is this.
Right.
Then comes all the rest of it. So you are going to be right after the law report and after non-agenda items, just as the people were today.
I had to recuse myself tonight from the CDP, but we will advise and recommend on this one, Don and I. Okay, and we will handle it in our usual order on the monthly agenda. Okay.
Yeah. And then you'll give us a call when you're coming. So
anything else at this moment, because we need to adjourn. Okay, it's getting late. That's
Move
it.
to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. A second.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, that was a tie.
Ready? Don.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Tom.
Aye.
Robert. Aye. Thanks for hanging in there, everyone. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Good night.
Night.